How to Kiss a Guy in 10 Days. Edenvale Arts Academy Series, Book 1. Written by Liwen Ho. Narrated by Alyssa Gray. Chapter 1. Seth. Ever have one of those moments when someone totally out of your league sees you from across a room and waves? And you know there's no possible way they're saying hi to you, and they must be waving at someone behind you? Well, yep, that's pretty much my life. Because I, shy and awkward Seth Spark, would never be the recipient of any girl's attention, much less a cute one. Except maybe for today. I swallowed hard as the petite brunette sitting on the other side of the noisy courtyard waved her hand in the air. Why in the world would she be calling me over? Could it be the extra 10 minutes I'd spent in front of the mirror styling my hair? Or the fact that I had shaved for the first time this morning? I really hoped it wasn't because I'd left a piece of toilet paper stuck to my face from when I nicked myself. A quick swipe of my chin made me sigh in relief. Hey, new kid, over here. Come join us. Okay, the girl was definitely calling for my attention. Too bad she got everyone else within 10 feet of us to look up too. The rustling of lunch bags stilled, and a dozen heads turned my way. This was not how I imagined my first day at Edenvale Arts Academy to be. All I'd wanted to do was keep my head down, dance, and get good grades. And most of all, make sure no one found out I was related to the school's founders. But if my face got any hotter, I'd likely get voted most likely to die of embarrassment. I'd never be able to fly under the radar with a reputation like that. Hitching my backpack over one shoulder, I quickly shuffled my feet around some benches where kids were eating their lunches and made my way over before she called me again. I'd never seen her before, but considering I'd been in the dance studio all morning, that wasn't a surprise. All the students focused on classes for their particular major: drama, vocal, visual arts, guitar, and graphic design, for 3 hours of the day. After lunch was when we took regular academic classes, and we met up with kids from other majors. It seemed like I was getting a head start on that now. When I reached the bench she was sitting on, the girl looked me up and down with a mischievous glint in her brown eyes. She nodded, satisfied, and exclaimed, "He's perfect for the job." Job? I rubbed the back of my neck where my hair was buzzed flat against my head. I stood there, brows raised, wondering what I'd gotten myself into on my first day of sophomore year. Ava, no! It's a crazy idea. Please stop. You're embarrassing him. My heart literally stopped beating at the sound of this new voice. Her voice. Not the girl who had called me over, but the friend sitting next to her. How in the world had I not noticed her sooner? Wow. Oh, wow. She was gorgeous. Like time-lapse gorgeous, where so much is going on in a video it's hard to take it all in. And you don't dare blink in case you miss something amazing that's about to happen. I couldn't take my eyes off her. But I forced myself to look away when she gave me a curious smile. Even as I stared down at my sneakers, I could see her in my mind. Long red hair that fell down her back, sparkling blue eyes, an adorable button nose, and heart-shaped lips. She wore a pair of skinny jeans and an off-the-shoulder top with the words, "You're killing me, Smalls." Oh man, I needed a shirt with words too, except mine would say, "Officially dead." I didn't know how I'd be able to focus or talk or breathe now. It was a good thing the girl named Ava wouldn't stop talking. Hannah, come on, trust me. You know it's a great idea. It'll be a total game changer if you show up with this hunk. My head jerked up when I heard the word hunk. There was no way she was referring to me. Right? I was about as unhunky as they came. Sure, I'd gone through a growth spurt over the summer and was now 5'10", maybe 5'10 and a half on a good day, but as a dancer, my muscles were more lean than mean. I don't want to drag someone I just met into my mess. Hannah shielded her eyes from the midday sun as she looked up. I immediately moved to my left to help block the rays, and was rewarded with a bright smile. I didn't mean for you to get involved in this. Sorry we interrupted your lunch. Hannah, the girl with the pretty voice and even prettier eyes, was talking to me now, and my mind went completely blank. It took about 5 seconds, 5 painfully slow seconds for my adrenaline to kick in. Worries not, my lunch I didn't eat. I cringed, wishing my tongue had left the dexterity my feet did. I took a deep breath and tried again, my face flaming. I meant, don't worry about it. I didn't start eating yet. I'm Seth, by the way. Seth Montgomery. Not a short green guy with hair coming out of his ears, in case you were wondering. Ava gave me a blank stare, like I'd said the lamest joke ever, but Hannah actually giggled. The sound was like music, and it made my tense shoulders relax. Hannah's blue eyes lit up. You're funny, Seth. I'm Hannah, and my all-too-helpful bestie here is Ava. And you, Ames, need to brush up on your Yoda knowledge, she added as she elbowed her friend. That's what you get for falling asleep during our Star Wars marathon last weekend. You know I'm a reality show kind of girl. I prefer drama that's relatable, like yours. Hannah rolled her eyes. I think we've taken up enough of Seth's time. We should let the poor guy eat his lunch. It's okay, really. I don't mind. I hope I didn't sound as eager as I felt. The last thing I wanted was to appear desperate, but since I was new to this school and the complete opposite of a social butterfly, I hadn't made any friends yet. It was nice having people to talk to. The fact that they were girls made it all the more unbelievable and awesome. I love to help people, assuming you want my help. Aren't you uber sweet? Ava wiggled her brows up and down. Do you hear this, Hen? Like I said, he's perfect for the job. There was that word again. Job. I wondered what exactly I'd signed up for. I licked my lips and hoped my brain and mouth continued working together. Tell me more. What's this job that you think I'm perfect for? Hannah looked torn. She wrinkled her perfectly adorable nose and chewed on her lower lip, a move that was making my stomach drop. I don't know. It's a crazy idea. We just met. It would be too weird. Crazy and weird. Now I was too curious to let it go. Do you need help with a project or something for class? My mind was spinning now, going through the possible scenarios. Oh wait, are you a visual arts major and you need someone to... I gulped. Pose for you? Ava burst out laughing. Apparently now I'd said the funniest thing in the world. Okay, I changed my mind. You are funny. And if we did need a model to draw, you'd be our first choice. But what Hannah needs is a little more complicated. If they only knew how complicated my life was right now. Meeting these girls was the least messy part of it. Even the best part. I didn't want this conversation to end, so I stood tall and lifted my chin. With a confident grin, I declared, I can do complicated. Hannah smiled, showing off a dimple on her left cheek. My heart clenched at the sight. I didn't know how she could be even more beautiful, but that dimple was like the cherry on top of my favorite sundae. She had me under her spell, a spell more powerful than any sugar high. I was a goner. It didn't matter what she said, and my answer was already yes. Ava clapped her hands and squealed, Awesome! Go on, Han, tell him. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Hannah's face as she said, I need a fake boyfriend, Seth. Chapter 2. Hannah. I held my breath while the whole world around me grew muffled. I could still make out the drama students reciting some lines from Shakespeare and the guitar majors playing riffs, but it was like I was standing in a vacuum. The only thing I could hear clearly amidst the sounds of voices and music was the pounding of my heart. My hands were cold and clammy despite the warm September sunshine. I waited, staring up into Seth's wide blue eyes, and wondered if he'd be the second boy to reject me today. Good gravy, as my Grammy always said. What'd I get myself into? You need a what? Seth looked at me suspiciously. I didn't blame him. I would too if a random stranger I just met fake asked me out. Are you asking me to be your boyfriend? Pretend boyfriend, Ava corrected him. She scooted over on the metal bench and patted the empty spot between us. Take a seat and we'll fill you in on all the juicy details. I rolled my eyes at Ava's dramatic tone, but I was secretly happy to have her help. Ever since we met last year, our freshman year at Edenvale, In our voice technique class, she'd been my biggest supporter, even closer than the girls I'd known for half my life who called themselves my BFFs at my old private school. You figure out real quick who your real friends are when your family loses all its money because your dad went to prison. Here's the deal, Seth, Ava continued, as she took out her usual sunflower butter and strawberry jelly sandwich from her lunch bag. She unwrapped it and took a bite. Hannah's ex, Bradley, agreed to take her to some fancy dance at a posh country club next weekend. But he texted her this morning and told her his parents want him to take this other girl instead. And that girl, what's her name again, Han? Brooklyn. I shuddered just saying the name of my nemesis. Brooklyn, Ava's face contorted like she'd eaten a sour pickle. She's the one who spread all these rumors about Hannah online last year when... She clamped her mouth shut suddenly. Never mind. Let's just say it was bad. Oh, that sucks. Seth looked over at me, his voice as sad as his eyes. Normally I hated to be on the receiving end of pity, but I didn't mind his so much. Maybe because I also saw kindness in his eyes. They were a really pretty shade of blue, much darker and more intense than mine, and matched his navy V-neck tee perfectly. His broad shoulders and toned arms looked like those of a dancer. I'm really sorry that happened to you. I know what it feels like to be bullied. That's the reason I changed schools. I didn't want to deal with it Sorry, I shouldn't be dumping on you. You have your own stuff to deal with. No, it's okay. It's cool to meet someone who gets it. I didn't want him to feel bad about my problems, but I was honestly glad we met. Seth seemed like such a sweet guy. So different from my on and off again boyfriend. Even before Bradley's world and mine got separated by zip codes and social circles, he never really understood me for my love for singing. We had so little in common, I doubted if we would have even gone together if our moms hadn't been friends. It was different, in a good way, to know that Seth and I had gone through some of the same stuff. I had a good feeling about him. We all have our sob stories. That's kind of the prerequisite for getting into a school for disadvantaged teens, right? Other than having a talent in the arts, of course. Seth scoffed softly, his gaze dropping to the ground. Yeah, sure. I exchanged a look with Ava, both of us wondering if we'd hit a touchy subject. Some of the kids at Edenvale, especially the drama majors, loved telling their stories. The sadder they were, the better. It was a badge of honor to have overcome whatever adversity they'd gone through, and to be accepted into the private art school that Evan and Emma Spark, two amazing A-list actors, had started. With only 300 spots for the whole school, it was a privilege to be here. Still, I knew some kids like me didn't want everyone knowing about their family's dirty laundry. Maybe that's how Seth felt too. Ava spoke up with a no-nonsense way about her that I loved. You know what? Enough of the past. We're here to help Hannah with her future. It's time for some sweet revenge. Are you in, Seth? All you need to do is take her to the dance next Saturday. Make sure Bradley sees you guys together and make him Jealous. She raised her fists into the air as she chanted the letters. Seth's brows shot up high on his forehead as he watched Ava. I quickly explained. She's been on a Bring It On binge lately. Anyway, about the dance. I don't even know if I can get us in. My parents used to be members of the club, but that was before I lowered my voice. My dad got caught up in some insider trading scandal at his company. He's in prison now. He is? Seth's eyes brightened, which was not the reaction I expected. My dad was in jail too. Money laundering. He got out earlier this year though, but then he got sick. I waited for him to finish his thought, but he only got quiet and stared off into the distance. Ava looked weirded out, but I had this sudden urge to hug Seth. I'm the kind of person who cries at emo videos, especially ones of injured animals. Right now, Seth reminded me of the sad two-legged dog I saw last night on YouTube, except that Seth was 5 times bigger and far less hairy, although he did have a nice head of sandy blonde waves. I decided to pat his arm instead, which made him jump. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. He glanced down to where my hand had just touched him and immediately blushed. Back to what we were talking about before. Which country club will the dance be at? Palo Alto. Why? I think I can get us in. My uncle, he's got connections. Ava swallowed the bite of food in her mouth and grinned. Now we're talking. I knew Seth was our guy. Don't I know how to pick 'em? I could only shake my head at Ava's rhetorical question. Somehow she turned my little venting session into an elaborate setup. I didn't know whether to be scared or amused, maybe a bit of both. It felt good, though, to have something to focus on other than my family's drama. With Dad gone for at least another year and Mom working 2 jobs to make ends meet, all I had to look forward to were microwaved meals in front of the TV. Even Liam, my older brother, had a girlfriend to keep him busy. A fake boyfriend was better than no boyfriend, especially someone like Seth. He didn't have the same charm as Bradley, but he was definitely cute and eager to help. I wanted to make sure he knew what he was getting into. Are you sure you're okay with this, Seth? There's no pressure. Hannah, Ava cut in, tilting her head of thick, dark hair to the side. She glared at me like I just told her the Wi-Fi was down. What are you doing? He said yes already. He didn't actually say the word yes, so I didn't want to assume. He said he could get you into the club. Yeah, but... Guys! We both stopped talking around Seth's head and turned to face him. He looked back and forth at me and Ava and laughed. My answer is yes. I'll do it. I'll be your fake boyfriend for the dance, Hannah. Great! Thank you, Seth. Ava beamed, pleased to have won. All you guys have to do now is practice. Practice? Both Seth and I blurted out at the same time. Yes! Practice being boyfriend and girlfriend. How else will you guys convince Bradley you're legit? Chapter 3. Seth. What do you have in mind? I cringed, hating how my voice cracked mid-sentence like I was going through puberty again. My nerves were really getting to me, especially with how close Hannah was. The scent of her shampoo smelled awesome, like strawberry shortcake and honey. I could see a light sprinkling of freckles across the bridge of her nose, especially when she wrinkled it like she was doing now. I wondered if that was a sign of disgust at the thought of practicing our fake relationship. Or maybe it was worry, which perfectly described the tightening in my own chest. I'd never had a girlfriend, much less held hands with a girl other than my little sister, Sophie. Maybe practicing wasn't such a bad idea after all. What do you mean by legit? Ava gave me a look that said, duh. First of all, you'll need to come up with a story of how you guys got together. Oh, like a meet-cute. I had to give props to my stepdad, who happened to be a romance author, for teaching me that term. I'd read a couple of his books, so I wasn't completely clueless when it came to dating. It's the moment when a guy and a girl meet for the first time, and it's usually embarrassing, funny, or cute. Hannah grinned, making my cheeks warm again. How do you know what a meet-cute is? I've watched a lot of rom-coms with my stepdad. He's kind of a romantic guy, I answered, trying my best to be vague. It wasn't like he was famous like my Uncle Evan or Aunt Emma, but he did have some die-hard fans, especially older ladies who liked to read his books. I wouldn't be surprised if someone's aunt or grandmother at school had heard of Brandon Spark. The fewer ties I had to the name Spark, though, the better. I didn't want anyone to think I'd only gotten into Edenvale based on nepotism. That's why I had enrolled under my mom's maiden name, Montgomery, which is what I'd been going by before my stepdad adopted me 5 years ago. We could just say we met on the first day of school, which is the truth. Hannah narrowed her eyes at me. What year are you? I'm a sophomore. Both me and Ava are. Same, I smiled as a thought came to me. We probably have some classes together. I'm sure we do. Let's say we met in one of our classes when I, borrowed a pen from you. You do have a tendency to lose stuff, Ava chimed in on the other side of me. I misplaced them, which is different from losing, Hannah protested. She pressed her pretty pink lips together as she rummaged through her backpack. Which is what I think happened to my lunch. Aw, man. I actually remembered to pack a sandwich today, but I must have left it at home. You can have one of mine. I reached into my own backpack and took out a 6-inch long sub sandwich wrapped in parchment paper and tied it with a red string. My mom always packs me too because she knows how hungry I get after dancing. I hope you like roast beef on Dutch Crunch. Several emotions ranging from surprise to gratitude flickered over Hannah's face as she nodded. She took the sandwich and held it with both hands like it was a treasure. Then she looked up at me with a smile that warmed me to the core. Thank you so much, Seth. Are you sure you have enough? Oh yeah, no worries. I have a stash of protein bars too that I always carry around with me. Doing such a small favor for Hannah made me feel like a hero. I would have gladly given her all my food plus the shirt off my back if she'd smile at me like that again. She started eating, so I stopped staring. I really needed to quit doing that if I didn't want her to think I was a creeper. I took out my other sandwich and took a bite too. Aw, look at you guys, Ava cooed, clapping her hands. You're already sharing your food like a real couple. Good job! I almost scoffed. It seemed silly to be complimented for something I learned to do in preschool, but it felt good to get Ava's approval. In a weird way, she'd become our unofficial coach. I didn't know about Hannah, but I sure needed to learn some pointers on how to be a good boyfriend. A fake one, of course. I doubted I qualified to be a real one for someone as beautiful and sweet as Hannah. Thanks, Coach, I replied drolly. I have a feeling this job won't be hard to do at all. Hannah looked up briefly, but then continued eating. The way she was chomping that sub down with great big bites made me wonder if she was extra hungry or if she really liked Mom's food. Somehow she finished up her sandwich before me, which was a pretty awesome feat. She then hiccuped, her cheeks reddening with a rosy glow, as she pressed her hand to her mouth. Excuse me, I think I ate too fast. I take it you like the sandwich? Her cheeks flushed even more. It was amazeballs, definitely the best meal I've had in a long time. Thanks again, Seth. You're very welcome. I stuffed my last bite into my mouth and brushed some crumbs off my jeans. Her lips curved into that amazing smile again, making my jaw go slack. I would have stayed that way staring at Hannah if Ava hadn't started on her next lesson. All right, now on to the important stuff. Finishing with her food, Ava got up and stood before the two of us. She made a sweeping motion, gesturing for me to move closer to Hannah. Come on, it's time to practice your PDA. Put your arm around her. My arm? Yes. Can you at least try to pretend to like your fake girlfriend? I gulped. Liking Hannah wasn't the problem. I liked her a lot. Way more than I should under the circumstances, which made relaxing around her impossible. It was like trying to sit still when a song with a good bass line came on the radio. I couldn't. My feet were made to dance. Except in this case, the thought of touching Hannah caused my whole body to tense up. I just couldn't do it. And I didn't have a good excuse to give, so I started chugging water instead, to keep my mouth too busy to respond. Hannah sensed my hesitation because she shook her head at Ava. You can't expect him to act all lovey-dovey when he barely knows me. He's not a drama major, Ava. Give him some time to get used to the idea. He just met me, remember? Oh, for crying out loud! Ava threw her hands up into the air, exasperated. I'm not asking him to kiss you. That one line made me spit out my mouth full of water, which sprayed all over Ava's floral top and pink skirt. I jumped up, my face on fire. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. No sweat. Ava shrugged as she brushed the droplets off her clothes. It's just water. At least this proves I'm not the Wicked Witch of the West. Bending her knees, she pretended to melt to the ground. A tall guy walked up behind Ava just then with a smirk on his face. He reached out to ruffle her hair. So you'll watch The Wizard of Oz but not Star Wars? I'll have you know that Yoda's green face is just as attractive as the Wicked Witch's. With a look of sheer disgust, Ava swatted at the guy's hand as she stood up straight. She turned around and placed her hands on her hips. Ugh, I knew it was you, Liam Mitchell. Stop messing with my do. Your do is just fine. Who are you trying to impress anyway, Ava? Liam seemed to finally notice me. His gaze flicked toward me as he asked, Is this your current conquest? No way, Seth is Hannah's friend. Hannah quickly jumped in. Our new friend. He just started at Edenvale today. Oh yeah? Liam eyed me. How old are you and what's your major? I'm 15, majoring in dance. Modern dance to be specific. I wondered why this guy was asking so many questions. Even though he was an inch shorter than me, there was something about him that made me squirm. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue, looked me up and down, sizing me up. I could clearly make out the outline of his broad shoulders and defined chest through his black shirt. He had to be an upperclassman, probably a senior. I suddenly felt protective of Hannah and wondered how she knew him. Before I could work up the courage to ask, Hannah answered my question with an introduction. Seth, this is my very overprotective big brother, Liam. That's when I knew that Hannah, even if there was a remote chance that she'd ever like me, was totally and completely off limits. Chapter 4. Hannah. Ugh, I wish I could dissolve into a puddle of water on the floor right then and there. I hated when Liam got all up in my business. Something he'd been doing ever since I could remember, but even more so after our family's world turned upside down. He was only 17, 2 years older than me, but he acted like he was 70, always telling me who I should hang out with and where I could or couldn't go. He never liked my old friends or Bradley, which was why I was not going to tell him about Bradley's text that morning, or about Ava's and now my plan to date Seth as payback. I'd never hear the end of it if I did, and Seth would most definitely not survive a full-on Liam interrogation. The poor guy could barely handle Ava. I'd already dragged Seth into more than he'd bargained for. You can move on now, Liam, I urged him. You've done enough big brothering for today, thank you. As you can see, I'm happy, healthy, and in one piece. But are you hungry? He pulled a pink reusable lunch bag out of his backpack and handed it to me. You forgot this on the kitchen counter, sis. That's where it was. Thanks. I tried to ignore the smug look on Liam's face as I took the bag from him. I hated feeling inadequate, which was how I often felt in comparison to my brainy, overly capable brother. It didn't help my case either to hear Ava giggling. The only consolation I had was seeing the kind, understanding look on Seth's face as he smiled at me. Seth shared his lunch with me, so I'll save this for tomorrow. You did that, man? Liam actually gave Seth half a smile of approval, which was more than he ever gave me. Thanks for watching out for my sister. Seth nodded. It was no problem at all. Hannah, you shouldn't have made Mom go out of her way to drop you off this morning. Liam scolded me, obviously not finished with his lecturing. You should have waited for me. You were gonna pick up Savannah. I didn't want to be a third wheel again. Liam had only started dating his drama major girlfriend over the summer, so they were in their honeymoon phase, kissing and touching all the time. I couldn't understand why any girl wanted to kiss my disgusting brother, but to witness it from the back seat of his car was more than I could take. Anyway, Mom didn't mind. She says that because she doesn't want to hurt your feelings, but you should think about hers once in a while. You cost her half an hour of sleep. Just come with me from now on, all right? I'll meet you in the parking lot after school. Liam sighed, then turned to go. Hot tears pricked the corners of my eyes as I watched him join his group of guy friends. I ducked my head and fiddled with the hem of my shirt, bunching it up in my hands. Why did Liam have to be right? I knew Mom was tired. She joked about her raccoon eyes all the time. But I'd been more concerned about my own needs than hers. My insides twisted, and I almost wished I hadn't eaten Seth's sandwich. It'd been so mouth-watering good, but right now it sat like a boulder in my stomach. Hey, don't listen to him, Ava nudged me gently with her elbow. He's being a brat. I'm sure your mom didn't mind driving you. I sniffled and shrugged, knowing she was only trying to make me feel better. She was my bestie after all. That was in her job description, but her words didn't help. I knew I was being selfish and self-centered, the very things teenagers don't want to be known for. Thanks, but Liam's right. I just wish he wasn't right all the time, you know? Ava smirked. I wouldn't say all the time. Maybe half? I rolled my eyes. Either way, the odds were always in Liam's favor, not mine. He was the golden child of our family. I was the little tag-along. Your brother might be right, but so was Ava. Seth, who had been quiet all this time, finally spoke up. He was sitting next to me again, this time turned toward me so our knees almost touched. I'm sure your mom enjoys spending time with you. I know when my mom was a single mom and working her behind off to support us, she always wished she had more time for me. Even when she was tired from cutting hair all day, she'd ask me about school and if I needed help with my homework. She used to have these dark circles under her eyes, but her eyes always lit up when she saw me. I bet your mom's the same way. I blinked away my tears as Seth's words sank in. My stomach felt a little less achy as I thought back to my car ride with Mom. We had talked the whole way to school about the courses I'd signed up for, and then about the adorable preschool kids in her class. She had yawned a few times before her coffee kicked in, but then she turned up the radio and sung along with me to Taylor Swift's new single. When she hugged me before I got out of the car, she told me how proud she was of me. What Seth said was true, but how in the world had he known exactly what I needed to hear? I lifted my head and met his gaze. This stranger was on the fast track to becoming a friend. You're right, Seth. My mom and I had a good time together this morning. I don't know how you knew that. You're pretty amazing. Not really, he protested with a strong shake of his head. I just said what anyone would say. Ava held up her hand. Just for the record, Han, I did say it first. I had to laugh at her serious expression. Yeah, you did. And you know what? You're both amazing. I looked back and forth at each of them. My eyes started filling up with tears again, but happy ones this time. Good friends were hard to find. I lucked out big time. I don't know what I'd do without you guys. Well, since you met Seth less than an hour ago, I think we know who's the more amazing one here. Ava sighed dramatically, her long lashes fluttering. No offense, Seth, but it's hard to compete with me. He chuckled. None taken. Sitting between these two wonderful human beings gave me the sudden urge to wrap my arms around them. So I did. My right arm went up around Ava's shoulder and my left one around Seth's waist. With a squeeze, I hugged them close and shut my eyes. As I inhaled deeply, a mixture of sweet coconut mingled with fresh smell of soap filled my senses. Like their scents, Ava and Seth were as different as could be, but they were perfect in their own ways. I opened my eyes and gave them my most grateful smile. You guys are the best. Ava grinned and squeezed me back. Ditto to you too. Seth, on the other hand, seemed frozen in place. His eyes were open wide, so wide I could see his pupils nearly eclipsing his irises. A blush colored his cheeks, making its way along his skin to the tips of his ears. He was so stiff, I wondered if he wasn't used to human touch. Seth, relax, it's just a hug. I let go of him and shook my head in wonder. Aves is right. We really do need to practice. Bradley's not going to believe any of this if you can't even stand me touching you. Don't worry, I've got this, Ava assured me as the bell rang for the next period. Note to self, work on PDA. Chapter 5. Seth. I honestly didn't know how I'd be able to focus after Hannah hugged me. Hearing the bell ring and seeing all the kids in the courtyard pack up their lunches and head off kind of started my feet moving. I said bye to the girls before stopping at my locker to drop off my dance clothes. My heart pounded as if I just completed a dozen triple move turns back to back. My head was floating somehow apart from my body but still in control of it. And the weirdest but best part was the goofy grin that wouldn't leave my face. I could still feel the warmth from Hannah's arm looped around my back and how her fingers had gripped my waist. Even her sweet scent still lingered in the air. Or maybe it was now stuck to my shirt, a shirt I vowed never to wash again. My face had been so close to hers. If I'd so much as turned, we would have been nose to nose. I swallowed hard, imagining the possibilities. I'd never been so close to a girl before, at least not one who mattered. My old preteen dance partners didn't count. The crazy thing was that I'd never thought a girl would talk to me on my first day of school. But here I was, friends with one. That's what Hannah had called me, her friend. Being real friends with her was way better than being her fake boyfriend. But I didn't mind being both. Especially if she ever hugged me like that again. This practicing Ava had in mind didn't sound so bad after all. I just needed to pull myself together next time and not freeze up. I made my way past the row of lockers, then headed into the main building where my next class was held. At least I didn't need to worry about finding my way around since I'd been here several times with Uncle Evan before Edenvale opened. Back then, the school had seemed so much bigger. I loved seeing all the classrooms with their new desks and clean whiteboards. The dance studio with its bright lights and shiny floor had been my favorite place on campus. The idea of being able to dance at school had blown my mind. So when Uncle Evan asked if I wanted to attend, I jumped, literally, at the chance. Being a student here was a dream come true, and a lifesaver after the year I'd had. I found my classroom and took a seat in the back corner. There was a bookcase to my right filled with classics and some current books I'd read over the summer. Reading was my second favorite activity, something I did when my body needed a break from dancing. I liked sitting near books, but preferred hiding behind the other students even more. Class participation was my weakest area. I had no problems during my homework or acing tests, but public speaking was my kryptonite. I slunk down in my chair, glad the kid in front of me had a full head of wavy brown hair to block mine. The English teacher, Mrs. Summercorn, a petite woman with tight salt and pepper curls and wiry glasses, began taking attendance. In a bright, cheery voice, she called out each name, starting with the A's. There were about 20 of us in the class, so she made it through half the alphabet fairly quickly. Naomi Liu? Here. A girl with long black hair, sitting diagonally across from me, answered. I go by Mimi. Mrs. Summercorn nodded and added a note in her book before moving on to the next name. I expected her to say mine next, but she called out Nolan Parker instead. The dark-haired guy in front of me raised his hand. Present. My shoulders tensed as I heard the next two students answer to their names. Both last names started with R. When Mrs. Summercorn moved on to the S's, I started chewing on my pencil. This was not how it was supposed to... Seth Spark? My throat closed up. No. Uncle Evan had promised me all of my school records would say Montgomery. Seth Spark? Is there a Seth Spark here? Yes, I'm here, I waved, feeling all eyes on me. Mrs. Summercorn acknowledged me with a brief nod. Nolan turned in his seat and gave me a curious smile. Soon enough, he, along with the rest of the class, turned their attention to the front as Mrs. Summercorn passed out the syllabus. I pretended to read the 2-page handout as we went through it, but I was too embarrassed and nervous to pay attention. Do people know who I was? Would I get a rep at this school too, all because of who my family was? It wasn't that I was ashamed of being my stepdad's son. I really wasn't. He was the best thing to have happened to my mom and me. Brandon Spark was 1,000,000 times a better father to me than Richard Weaver, my DNA dad, had ever been. I never referred to Richard as my real dad. He didn't deserve that title, not when he never cared about me, except to make sure that any news about the kid he had with his college girlfriend, my mom, didn't affect his political career, which he went on to sabotage all on his own. After he went to jail, though, the news did leak. When my DNA grandfather, Senator Weaver, tried to run for re-election, all heck broke loose. Reporters got really ruthless and dug up all the Weaver family secrets. Someone in my old school found out who I was, and that's when I went from invisible to infamous. Parents didn't want their kids to associate with me. My supposed friends stopped asking me to hang out. Even some of the teachers gossiped about me behind my back. Then there was that one incident. I still hated thinking about it. After that, I transferred to Edenvale to get a fresh start. I wondered if that was possible now. The rest of English passed by in a blur. I figured I could coast by this class since I'd done a lot of the reading already. By the time the bell rang, I just wanted to get out as fast as I could, but I had to wait for the kids in front of me to leave first. That was the only downside to sitting in the back. I took my time stuffing my binder into my backpack and zipping it closed. As I swung it over my shoulder, I looked up, feeling someone watching me. It was Nolan. He was about my height with a lanky build and friendly brown eyes. He pushed up the sleeves of his gray hoodie and nodded. Seth, right? I'm Nolan. You're new, aren't you? Yeah, hi. That was more of a rhetorical question. Everyone knows everyone here. You can't help it with a school this size. I kind of like it, though. There's always a familiar face wherever you look. What about you? Did you come from a big school? How do you like it here so far? I followed him out of the classroom and into the crowded hall. It amazed me how much Nolan could talk. I didn't mind listening, but I did cringe at the thought of answering all of his questions. Yes to both questions. My last school was huge, like 4 times this size. So far, Edenvale seems cool. That's cool. Nolan walked next to me, his sneakers squeaking along the floor as he practically bounced around. Did I hear Mrs. Summercorn right? I think she said your last name's Spark. Are you related to Evan Spark? It'd be awesome if you were. I'd be stoked if someone I knew actually knew someone famous. That's like 2 degrees of separation. You know how they say everyone's connected by 6 degrees. My face immediately flushed. I hated lying, especially about my family. The Sparks were the coolest, most amazing people on the planet. I was beyond blessed to be related to them, not because of what they did for a living, but because they accepted me and my mom without judgment. I also owed my love of dance to Uncle Evan. When he'd proposed to Aunt Emma, he'd asked me to be a part of his flash mob. Learning the steps to that dance routine and then performing it had sparked a passion in me. I became a little less shy and awkward that day, and more comfortable in my own shoes. Or more literally feet. That's why I felt like such a traitor when I finally found the words to answer Nolan. Yeah, it'd be awesome if I were. That answer wasn't completely a lie, but I still felt like a fake anyway. This level of pretending wasn't as fun as the one I'd agreed to do with Hannah, but at least my cover wasn't being blown. I guess going to Edenvale is the closest we'll get to knowing a celebrity, Nolan smirked. Hey, I've got geometry next. You? Me too. Cool, it's this room. He led the way into the next open classroom, pointing to 2 empty seats in the back. Is over there okay for you? Yeah, I like the back. I sat down, pulled my backpack on the floor, and faced forward. My eyes lit up when I saw who happened to be walking through the door at that moment. A pair of light blue eyes greeted me with a wink. Whoa, dude, did Hannah Mitchell just wink at you? Nolan gawked at me. His jaw dropped so low I could see his back molars. Are you guys, together? No, not really, I mumbled. It's complicated. I like complicated. I want all the facts later. He wiggled his eyebrows and gave me a knowing smile, like we'd been friends forever instead of just 5 minutes. As I'd hoped, Hannah took the desk next to mine. Ava walked in soon after and took the seat behind us. Ava leaned forward and spoke in a loud whisper. I came up with a game plan already, guys, and the perfect name. Operation How to Fool a Guy in 10 Days. It has a nice ring to it, don't you think? I like it, Hannah whispered back. It's perfect. I had to agree. It really was. This day with the new friends I'd made was turning out to be totally epic. Who knew what the next 10 days would bring? Chapter 6. Hannah. The smell of homemade yumminess met me at the door as soon as Liam and I came home. Apple and cinnamon to be exact, which had me dropping my backpack onto the carpet and rushing into the kitchen. The sight of my grandma in a red apron cutting into freshly baked pie on the counter made my eyes water. Mommy used to be the one waiting for me after school every day. Having Grammy show up at our place today was a close second. Grammy! I rushed over and wrapped my arms around her waist, savoring the warmth of her skin as she hugged me back. What are you doing here? Celebrating your first day of school, of course, and trying not to poke you with this knife, that's what. Good gravy, child. Next time, give me some warning, will you? Grammy laughed as she pulled back to look at me. It was like staring into a mirror. Mom had passed down Grammy's light blue eyes and fair complexion to me. Grammy cupped my cheek with one hand and frowned. Let's catch up. Have a seat and I'll bring you a slice of pie. I didn't know how she did it, but Grammy always knew when I needed cheering up. I'd already been feeling a lot better than I had in the morning, but I never turned down a chance to hang out with her, or to eat the mouth-watering dessert she set down before me. Her pies, especially today's with its cool lattice design crust, were totally Instagram-worthy. Even though I couldn't wait to take a bite, I first snapped a pic and uploaded it to my social media accounts. Liam walked in then, kissed Grammy on the cheek, and helped himself to a huge slice of pie. He then left to spend the rest of the day at a local diner, a part-time job he had to help pitch in with the bills. When it was just us left, Grammy brought her slice of pie and sat across from me at the round table next to the only window in the kitchen. Our apartment was tiny in comparison to the huge 2-story house we used to live in, but Mom had done her best to make it cozy. A bright yellow tablecloth and a centerpiece of miniature succulent plants added some life to the drab white walls and appliances. 4 wooden chairs sat around the table, each one before a placemat of a different color. Mine was pink, Liam's blue, Mom's purple, and Dad's green. It was bittersweet to see Grammy sitting in Dad's chair, a spot that had been empty for far too long. Holding her fork out, Grammy gave mine a gentle clink before we dug into our slices. Her tone was light as she asked, "How was your first day?" My head spun as I thought back to the past 6 hours. So much had happened in that time, I didn't know where to start. Like last year, I was super pumped about my vocal classes. It was cool that Edenvale had hired some awesome teachers, professionals who worked with popular artists in the music industry. We had our own recording studio too with the best equipment. My non-voice classes weren't nearly as exciting, but they weren't bad either. I've been relieved to see lots of familiar faces in geometry. One memory kept coming to mind, that of a pair of kind blue eyes. I couldn't help smiling when I thought about Seth. He was as sweet as the apple pie filling. "I made a new friend today, Grammy. His name's Seth. He's such a nice guy." "Nice? What happened to a hat?" Grammy winked. "Isn't that how you youngins describe boys these days?" "Seth's just a friend. I have a boyfriend, remember? Even though Bradley wasn't the ideal boyfriend, he was most definitely hot. I knew liking a guy for his appearance seemed shallow, but I didn't like him only for his chiseled good looks. We had a lot of history together. Our moms had set up regular play dates for us starting when we were in diapers. Our families used to vacation together, and he was my first and only kiss. Bradley was such a huge part of my past. I didn't have many memories without him up until 5 months ago. When I moved and changed schools, we talked about taking a step back from the relationship. It'd been Bradley's idea, but I'd agreed. There'd been so much going on at home then that I hadn't minded. But now the distance between us was growing wider, and I wondered how long it'd be before he really called it quits. Then the last piece of my former life would be taken from me too. That's why I needed to show up to the dance with Seth to remind Bradley of what we used to have. Grammy humphed, shaking her head of short gray hair. It wasn't a secret that she didn't like Bradley. She thought he was too full of himself and not good enough for her only granddaughter. I didn't want to know what she thought of Dad then, especially after he'd messed up like he had. If she was upset with Dad, though, she didn't show it. She did what she could to support us, like coming over to check up on me when she knew both Mom and Liam had to work late. "And how is this boyfriend of yours doing?" "He's fine." Grammy pinned me with her narrowed eyes, making me squirm. I could never hide anything from her. I groaned, then came clean. "Okay, he's not exactly fine. He's being a jerk." I told her about his text message from that morning, but left out the part about my plan to give him a taste of his own medicine. I get why his parents don't want him seeing me anymore, but it's just not cool. Our moms were friends for forever, and now they don't even talk. "I'm sorry, sweetie." Grammy patted my hand. Her nails were painted a pretty shade of purple and looked so much better than my short, ragged ones. I had a bad habit of chewing on my fingernails when I was nervous or lonely. I guess I'd been feeling both a lot recently. If Grammy noticed them, she didn't let on. She just gave me a bittersweet smile. "I know you didn't ask to be dragged into your parents' mess, but I'm so proud of you, Hannah, for how you've handled all the changes your family's gone through. I know it hasn't been easy." She could say that again. I'd give everything to rewind time to back when everything was normal. Back to when the only reason kids talked about me behind my back was because the girls wished they were me, and the boys wished they were Bradley. We'd been the it couple. I scoffed, thinking about how much had changed. At least I discovered Bradley's true colors. That's the spirit, dear. It always helps to look at the silver lining. Done eating, Grammy set down her fork and wiped her mouth with a tissue. "You've made new friends at this school. That's a big accomplishment." "It wasn't that hard to do. The kids at Edenvale are so cool. No one looks down on anyone else. There are still cliques, mostly because kids in the different majors like to hang out together. But we all appreciate how passionate everyone is about the arts." "So, what makes this new boy Seth so nice?" "He's really down to earth and supportive. His dad went to jail too, so he gets what that's like. There's just something about him that makes him so easy to talk to. I feel like I've known him a lot longer than just a day." I paused and met Grammy's gaze. "Is that weird?" Not at all. I felt that way about your grandfather the first time we met at the school library and reached for the same book. I was so comfortable being myself with him. I knew from that day on that he was the one for me. 48 years later, and we're still going strong. Grammy, I fought to not roll my eyes. I told you Seth's just a friend, nothing more. He's not really my type. Not your type? What girl doesn't like a boy who's kind and easy to talk to? Grammy scoffed. Is he cute? Cute? I chewed my last bite of apple pie as I thought about Seth's cuteness factor. He had a lot going for him, with his intense blue eyes and that shy but adorable smile. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being off the charts cute, he definitely came in at the top. Yeah, he's cute. Grammy beamed. Then there's potential for more. I did roll my eyes now. I loved my Grammy, but I was pretty sure her strength was in baking, not matters of the heart. Chapter 7. Seth. I couldn't remember the last time I was this eager to go to school. My feet tapped along to Taylor Swift's newest hit, coming through our minivan speakers, doing a little routine all on their own, as Dad pulled out of our driveway. Sophie sang along from where she sat behind me in the second row, her cute 4-year-old voice soaring above the music. "Daddy, louder!" Dad glanced at her in the rearview mirror and did as he was told. It was rare for him to not give in to Sophie's request. With her blonde curls, bright smile, and the Elsa dress she wore practically all day every day, she was our family's little princess. Plus, my stepdad was a total softie. He was also really good at sensing my mood. When we stopped at a red light, he gave me a curious smile. "You seem excited today." I shrugged and tried to keep my cool. I was totally thrilled, enthusiastic, ecstatic, and a dozen more synonyms combined, but I didn't want to get my hopes up. Wednesday had been so awesome. What were the odds of having 2 awesome days in a row? Today's schedule was the same though. Dance classes for 3 hours, then lunch with Hannah and Ava, like we'd agreed to after geometry class yesterday. Then there was math class itself with both girls and my new friend Nolan. There was already so much to look forward to about today, and I hadn't even stepped onto campus yet. I'm just really liking Edenvale. The classes are fun, the teachers are cool, and the kids are super nice. That's great, Seth. Dad glanced at me with a kind smile. He had on his work-from-home outfit, a pair of jeans and a gray t-shirt Mom had brought him, with the words, "I'm not quiet, I'm plotting." I know how hard high school can be, and after last year, well, you being able to change schools was an answer to prayer. I nodded, knowing how much he and Mom had been worried about me, and still were. "I'm doing good now, Dad. You guys don't have to worry." "I'm glad to hear that, but I'm afraid worrying comes with the territory of parenting. We'll probably still worry about you even when you're grown and living on your own. It's only because Mom and I love you so much." I was so glad we were still a block from school because his words had me turning red. Even Mom wasn't this gushy about her feelings. I did feel loved, though, by both of them, and knew I was really blessed to have parents who cared so much about me. But still, no 15-year-old likes to be babied. I know, Dad. Thanks." The road got more crowded when we neared Edenvale's parking lot a minute later. Sophie continued to entertain us with her singing while we waited in the long drop-off line. As our car inched forward, I looked out onto the sidewalk, hoping to see Hannah walk by. I kept feeling Dad's eyes on me, though. I assumed there was something he wanted to say, but didn't know how to. I met his gaze. "Is there something on your mind?" My question broke the tension in the air, making him chuckle. "How did you know?" I cracked a knowing smile. Even though we weren't blood-related, he and I were alike in a lot of ways. Both blonde and blue-eyed, both bookworms, and definitely more thinkers than talkers. It was kind of obvious, Dad. You kept looking at me. "Well, now that I've got your attention," his expression turned surprisingly serious. The last time I saw him like this was when I turned 13, and he had taken me out for ice cream. That was the most awkward conversation ever. I sure hoped this wasn't a repeat, especially with Sophie in the back seat. "I thought we covered everything already, Dad. I did take health class 2 years ago, so—" "Oh no, please, no." Dad burst out before he started coughing. His face turned bright red, almost as red as it had that day when he told me where babies come from. After a moment, his coughs turned into laughter, and he caught his breath. We did cover everything about that subject. This is about something completely different. I exhaled in relief. What is it? He became serious again, his brows drawn together. Lines appeared on his forehead, making me worry again. He took a deep breath and blurted out, "Richard, your dad, he called again. He really wants to see you." So that's what this was about. I slumped back into my seat, not meeting his eyes. I didn't understand why Dad was bringing this up since my answer hadn't changed this entire past year since Richard started calling. Well, I don't want to see him. I know, Seth, but he's your dad. My head jerked up. I almost laughed at that statement. It was so far from the truth. He's not my dad. He never cared about me before he got sick. Why should it matter now? Because he is sick. Cancer's changed him. He's not the same man he once was. He's trying to do better. He wants to get to know you. The compassion in Dad's voice made me mad and sad at the same time. He didn't owe Richard anything, not even an ounce of kindness. He was the one who taken care of Mom and me when Richard didn't want anything to do with us. Yet he was trying so hard to help him. If anyone was worth of being my dad, it was Brandon Spark. Instead, I had to share the same DNA with a criminal. The whole situation was so unfair. My chest tightened as I gripped the door handle. I wanted to escape this conversation as soon as possible. But I also wasn't ready to leave the car. I was the worst at hiding my emotions, and I'm sure there was a ton of them showing on my face right now. The skin under the collar of my green polo shirt felt hot like lava, threatening to spill from a volcano. I wiped my damp palms along the front of my jeans. We were nearing the end of the drop-off line where I'd need to get out. I knew Dad was waiting for me to say something, but I really didn't know what to say. "Bud?" I sighed. Whenever Dad used the nickname he gave me, it brought me back to the moment we first met, when he became the father figure I'd always longed for, and essentially my hero. My heart warred inside me. Part of it wanted to run and hide. The other part wanted to please Dad. The latter won. I gave him an answer, even if it was a cop-out one. "I'll think about it." "Thank you." Dad nodded and patted my shoulder. His blue eyes, which had been somber, suddenly lit up. Do you know that girl, Seth? The one in the blue skirt? She's waving at you." I turned to look out my passenger window, pretty sure Dad was mistaken. There was no way a girl would... Oh! My bad mood completely vanished. Standing near one of the brick planters was Hannah, wearing a red and white striped top tucked into a denim skirt. Her red hair was curlier than yesterday, but still fell loose down her back. She was absolutely beautiful, and she was waving at me. I seriously thought about pinching myself. Instead, I smiled and waved back, then turned to say goodbye to Sophie and Dad. "Now I see why you were so excited about coming to school today." There was a bit of pride and awe in Dad's voice. "She must be one of the super nice kids you mentioned before. What's her name, and how'd you meet her? I need all the deets, son. This is great inspiration for the young adult series I'm planning to write." "Dad, please don't use the word deets again. And please do not put me in one of your stories. That will be beyond mortifying." He grinned, looking a little too happy. "I'm kidding. But seriously, I want to hear all the details after school." "Okay, sure. I'll see you later, Dad. Bye, Sophie." I grabbed my backpack off the floor and climbed out of the van. After 3 long strides across the sidewalk, I came face to face with Hannah. Her dimple flashed my way, making my heart race. Everything in me wanted to wrap her up in a hug like a real boyfriend would do, but reality hit me as soon as I saw her brother pass by. Liam gave me a stern look, reminding me of my place. I gulped and quickly put myself back in the friend zone. "Hey, Hannah." "Hi, Seth. Did you see Ava's email from this morning? She sent us a whole agenda for the plan." She wiggled her eyebrows for emphasis. "For starters, you're supposed to walk me to class." "I didn't see it yet, but I can totally do that. It'd be my honor." The smile curving her pink lips was one of surprise and pleasure, and the best part was that it was aimed straight at me. That's when I knew it was going to be another awesome day. Chapter 8. Hannah. Seth was the sweetest guy ever, and the most reliable. Per Ava's instructions, he not only walked me to my first class of the day, he also met me outside my next 2 classes and walked with me as well. He always greeted me with a big smile each time and even carried my backpack for me. I almost felt like a princess getting the royal treatment. So far, Seth was hitting all the marks of being the perfect pretend boyfriend. Pay special attention to each other? Check. Have normal conversations? Check. Learn more about each other? Check. As we left the main building to meet Ava for lunch, I peered up at Seth and listened to him talk about his last dance class. His face lit up and he became animated, gesturing with his hands as he described the routine he was putting together. There's a part in the song that's the perfect place for me to add in a turn. I stopped to stare as he spun in place, first on one foot, then the other. His movements were so smooth and polished. He reminded me of a figure skater, except that he was spinning on concrete instead of ice. He had the same kind of excitement in his blue eyes that I felt whenever I figured out the perfect place in a song to add a vocal run. It was cool that even though we were in different majors, we shared the same passion. He suddenly got quiet and his face flushed. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on. I just get really excited when I talk about dancing. I know, I can tell. You're really good, Seth. I can't wait to see your whole routine. He started walking again, his cheeks even pinker. I'm okay, there are lots of better dancers than me, but I try not to compare. I dance because I like to. You know how people say Disneyland is the happiest place on earth? For me, it's the dance floor. I totally get what you're saying. It's the same for me, except my place is the shower or the recording studio, anywhere with good acoustics. Seth grinned. Is that really true, that the bathroom is the best place to sing? Yep. The hard walls and floors make sound waves vibrate faster, like around 100 times per second, which makes your voice sound deeper and fuller. Neat. Too bad I still sound like a croaking frog, no matter where I sing. He placed his hand around his throat and stuck out his tongue, making me laugh. I'm sure you sound better than a frog. You have a really nice speaking voice. I wasn't just saying that. Seth's tone had a rich, full timbre, especially for someone his age. Thanks. You, have really nice feet. His face flushed completely red as he shook his head. That sounded a lot less weird in my head. I only said that because I notice feet a lot, since I dance, and yours look graceful. I mean, you walk really gracefully. I looked down at my gold lace-up sandals and smiled. They were one of my last splurges when my family still had money for shopping sprees. I liked how they were both comfortable and trendy. I suppose they showed off my feet well, especially my painted pink toes. It was nice of Seth to notice. Thanks, I actually took some ballet and tap classes when I was in elementary school. I know nothing about modern dance, though. It's similar to ballet, but more freeform. I'd be happy to show you some moves sometime if you're interested. Sure. Actually, dancing is on the agenda too. There's a part of the night that's all ballroom dancing. The adults love it. You wouldn't happen to know how to do the waltz, would you? I'm a little out of practice. Actually, I do. Cool, that makes me feel a lot better. We approached our bench, the one we sat on yesterday, and waited for Ava to arrive. How was it that I just met Seth a day ago? It seemed like I'd known him so much longer than that. Maybe it's just one of those special friendships, like Ava's and mine. We got each other without question or judgment. I didn't know where Ava was, but I was getting hungry. Thankfully, I packed and brought my lunch today, so I wouldn't have to be a moocher again. What's more, I'd even baked some brownies with Grammy after dinner and brought extra to school. I took out a square container from my backpack and showed it to Seth. I brought dessert for us. They're double chocolate fudge. Seth's jaw dropped. Oh, wow. Those look so good. Did you make them yourself? My Grammy and I did. She came over to eat with me last night. She sometimes does that when my mom and Liam both have to work late. Nodding, Seth unwrapped his sandwich and started eating. Do they work late a lot? My mom does. She started working 2 jobs after my dad got locked up. She used to be a stay-at-home mom, so it was a pretty big change for everyone. Liam's home most nights, though, when he's not out with Savannah. I took out the sandwich I'd made, basically 2 slices of bread with turkey and lettuce, and took a bite. It wasn't nearly as good as the one Seth had shared with me, but it would do. I knew I couldn't afford to be picky. Even still, I found myself eyeing Seth's grilled panini. The melted cheese in the middle and the smell of pesto sauce made my mouth water. It was times like these when I missed the old days. My mom used to make the most delicious meals from scratch, and I'd help her chop veggies or stir the soup, and we'd spend the whole time chatting. I didn't only miss her cooking, I missed her company the most. Seth finished his sandwich before I'd eaten half of mine. I knew from seeing Liam eat that teenage boys had bottomless stomachs, but Seth made eating seem like a competitive sport. After he wiped his mouth, he gave me a shy smile. I guess I was pretty hungry. I figured it was either that or you were in some panini eating contest I didn't know about. His smile widened as I teased him. Ready for a brownie? Yes, please. The satisfied look on his face when he bit into one made me happy. It was the least I could do after he shared his lunch with me yesterday. He finished it in 2 more bites, then asked, "What do you do when it's just you at home?" "I do my homework, eat dinner, and watch Netflix. Sometimes I'll video chat with Ava if she's not busy. She has a lot of younger siblings to take care of, though, so she's not always free." Speaking of Aves, I wonder where she is. I paused and looked around the courtyard. There were dozens of kids around us eating their lunches too, but no sign of my bestie's perky smile. Does it ever get too quiet? Too quiet? Yeah, like lonely? There's no judgment in Seth's voice, just curiosity. I took another bite of my sandwich, taking my time to answer. I've never told anyone before how I felt, not even my family, or Ava. Everyone was trying so hard to get by, I didn't want to add to their burdens. But Seth was different. He gave me the sense that he had his act together. He had this calm, reassuring presence about him. If we were really dating, I'd totally have no problem spilling my guts. Maybe it was okay to be real with him. We were supposed to practice acting like we were together anyway. Sometimes, but I tell myself it's temporary and things will go back to normal. Or semi-normal, one day. Seth nodded. And when it gets too quiet, I go into the bathroom and sing. I paused, cringing. Okay, that sounded a lot less pathetic in my head. I really don't do it that often. No, it's cool, he smiled. If you ever want to, you can video chat with me, or even sing to me from the bathroom. Show me what the acoustics sound like in there. Somehow, Seth knew exactly what to say to make me feel better. And the way he looked at me, like he was seeing all of me and still liked what he saw, made my stomach dip a little. That had never happened before with a guy. I didn't know what to make of it, or have time to decipher it though, because Ava walked up to us. "Way to go, guys!" She was beaming, clapping her hands together, like we just finished a performance. Both Seth and I turned to her surprised. Her brown eyes sparkled as she looked from Seth to me, then back again. Great eye contact. Your body language was open and relaxed. You two totally looked comfortable with each other. Wait, were you... I had the sneaking suspicion she'd been up to something crazy. Were you watching us this whole time? Aves, that's creepy. Creepy, but brilliant. It was the only way to see you guys in action. I wanted to be sure you were believable together, which you are. She crossed her arms over her striped top and gave a firm nod. It'll be even better after we add in some PDA. My stomach dipped even more at the mention of PDA, which was so weird because Seth and I were only pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Why was my body reacting otherwise? Chapter 9. Seth. Apparently, Ava wasn't the only person who'd been watching Hannah and me at lunch. Nolan jumped at the chance to grill me as we walked from English to geometry later that day. I was so excited about Hannah and me spending time together that I blurted out the truth to him. It was as much for me as for him. I got the sense he didn't have much going on in his own love life. Not that what Hannah and I had qualified as love, but a guy could dream. According to Nolan, Hannah was fine with a capital F. I couldn't agree more. She was fantastic, fun and fascinating and gorgeous. Okay, that wasn't a real word, but it perfectly described how for reals gorgeous she was in every way. So you guys are pretending to date? Nolan turned to gawk at me, almost bumping into a kid walking in front of him. He sidestepped to avoid the collision but kept his eyes on me. That's almost as awesome as really dating her. How'd you luck out like that? You showed up at Edenvale, what, yesterday? No guy's been able to get anywhere close to Hannah Mitchell. What's your secret, man? I shook my head and gave him a blank stare. Nothing, no secrets. Well, none related to Hannah, at least. I wasn't about to start spilling my guts about my ties to both famous and infamous family members. So, other guys have tried asking her out, but she said no? When Hannah transferred here last April, some of the kids in her grade tried. Rumor is that a few of the upperclassmen did too, but no one was able to get past her brother. He's like our personal bodyguard. Nolan snuck a look around us as we entered the main building. When he seemed satisfied that no one was listening, he added, "I'd watch my back if I were you." My back? Oh, you mean watch out for her brother. Yep, my friend, Mimi, she's also a graphic design major like he is, says he's even scarier up close. He does this hairy eyeball thing when he doesn't like you. Hairy eyeball? Is that a medical condition? Not literally. Nolan rolled his eyes. Mimi has these funny ways of describing things. What she means is that he gives people the stare of death. Trust me, you don't want to be on the receiving end of that. Really? He seemed cool when he talked to me yesterday. He even thanked me for sharing my lunch with Hannah. Now Nolan was looking at me like I had grown 2 heads, which was just as weird as a hairy eyeball, but probably not as scary. Who are you, Seth Spark? You've got to give me some pointers. I've got no game at all. I had to laugh. No way, man. I'm the last person you should be asking for advice. I've never had a girlfriend, not even a close friend who was a girl. Believe me, I'm just as shocked as you are. Well, then maybe all I have to do is just be in your presence and hope some of your manly vibes rub off on me. His goofy grin suddenly turned serious. Something over my shoulder was making all the blood drain from Nolan's face. Speaking of manly, I turned around and seriously gulped. That whole talk about hairy eyeballs, I now understood it completely. The sight of Liam Mitchell with his clenched jaw and narrowed eyes would have made anyone nervous, but the fact that he was aiming his death stare straight at me sent chills down my spine. He's looking at me, isn't he? Nolan grabbed my arm and pulled me through the door to our math class. I breathed a huge sigh of relief as I took a seat. What was that all about? Had I done something to upset Liam? Or was he just being an overprotective brother like Hannah had said? Either way, I told myself to relax into the plastic seat back and focus on the whiteboard. There was no reason to worry now when the coast was clear. Or so I thought. Later, when I'd finished up the rest of my classes for the day, I stopped by my locker before heading to the car line. After stuffing my textbooks and my stinky dance clothes into my backpack, I went to close the metal door and nearly jumped out of my skin. A familiar pair of light blue eyes looked back at me, but they made my heart pound in a different way than Hannah's did. These eyes belonged to her brother, who was standing a foot away from me, with his back against the lockers. "Hey, Liam, how's it going?" My voice sounded as wobbly as my legs felt. I wish I could have blamed it on sore calves from dancing all morning, but that was only half the truth. The other half? I was scared silly. You tell me, should I be concerned about anything? Concerned? Yeah, about you and Hannah, he added with an ominous smirk. I saw the 2 of you today eating lunch together. Again. I nodded. There was no use denying the truth, not when half the school had seen us. Yeah, we did. Here's the thing about Hannah. She's smart and she's talented, but she's also too nice for her own good. She doesn't have the best taste in guys, which is why I'm here to watch out for her. He stood up straight and crossed his arms across his chest. The sleeves of his t-shirt strained with the bulge of his biceps much bigger than mine. He cocked his head to one side and studied me. Do you like my sister, Seth? Whoa, I swallowed hard. This was like one of those multiple choice questions where I had no idea how to answer, even when all the options were given to me. If I said no, would he take it to mean I didn't appreciate Hannah? But if I answered yes, would he assume I meant I was in love with her? I shrugged and did what any guy would do under the circumstances. I asked for clarification. What do you mean by like? Liam scoffed. Trying to be smart, are you? I'm asking if you're interested in Hannah As in guy-girl interested. Oh, that kind of interested. I resorted to playing dumb, mostly so I could buy some time and because I didn't want to seem like I was giving Liam attitude. That was the last thing I wanted to do. I really wanted to be on his good side and stay alive, so I lied. No way. He raised one brow like he didn't believe me. You're telling me you don't find her attractive? I do. She's beautiful and sweet and so nice. Oh man, what was I doing? Liam's hairy eyeballs stared me down, making it hard to think. I mean, any guy would, but attractiveness aside, I just want to be her friend, her guy friend, not boyfriend. A moment of silence followed, a very long moment in which Liam, even though we were around the same height, stared down at me. I felt like a bug under a microscope being studied and possibly soon to be squashed. I had no idea how I was going to get out of this situation, or if I'd be allowed to be Hannah's friend. The latter thought made my chest tighten. The seconds passed by, as did the few remaining students around us. The locker area grew so quiet I could hear the chirping of a bird in the tree we were standing under. I looked around and realized it was just Liam, his hairy eyeballs, and me left. Oh man, if there was a time I needed my feet to work, it was now, both literally and figuratively. I needed to think fast on my feet and get myself out of there. An idea came to me, one that was so crazy I didn't know if it would get me into more trouble or save the day. But I knew I needed to say something. So I stood up tall, throwing my shoulders back with confidence I didn't have, and gave it my best shot. I get why you care about Hannah so much. I have a younger sister too, and I'd do anything to protect her. His expression softened just a tad, but enough to give me the courage to continue. What if I said I could help you watch out for her? You know, be your eyes and ears when you aren't around. Are you talking about at lunchtime? Other times too, if you want me to. I could walk her to her classes. The dance and vocal studios are in the same building, so it wouldn't be out of my way. With me around, maybe it would lessen the chances of other guys asking her out. Liam rubbed a light scruff along his jaw as he considered my offer. Amusement flickered across his face, brightening his eyes so they were less menacing. That's not a bad idea. I like it. You do? Yeah, I do. You seem like a decent guy. You've already earned Hannah's trust, which says a lot, and it's a lot easier for you to hang around Hannah than for me to. I nodded, my head agreeing with everything Liam said, but my mind, it was officially blown. How was it that my plan to keep my friendship with Hannah and stay on her brother's good side was actually working out? The best part of all this is that you're a safe person for her to be around. My mouth fell open. Liam hardly knew me, but I take any compliment from him. That's really nice of you to say so. He scoffed. Don't go getting a big head. You're safe because she'd never fall for you. You're so not her type. So not Hannah's type? Great. That was exactly what I was afraid of. Chapter 10. Hannah. I hated the internet. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I wanted to go back to the dark ages before computers, social media, and Google, especially Google. Mom had told me horror stories about how she used to have to go to a library and use encyclopedias for research, and how they had to look through thousands of little cards that were stored in drawers just to find where a book was located. I couldn't imagine how slow the whole process must have been. But still, I really hated how we now had all the information in the world at our fingertips, especially stuff I don't want or need to see, like the photos on Instagram of Bradley looking tanned and gorgeous as he played tennis at the country club my family used to belong to, or the one of Brooklyn sipping a smoothie and posing in her designer jeans and pink Jimmy Choo sneakers, and of her shopping for a dress to wear to the dance Bradley was now taking her, not me to. Yep. I hated the internet. I sighed in the back seat of Liam's car, doing my best to keep my eyes occupied with my phone and not the PDA happening in front of me. We just parked in front of Savannah's brown one-story house, which was totally not on our way home from school. Savannah was still holding onto my brother's arm and gazing into his eyes like they held the answers to the mysteries of the universe. I guess she didn't care that his brain was more like a dark hole of nothingness. Wearing a little bitty cropped sweater, Savannah had her body pressed up to Liam's as she kissed his cheeks. She then moved to his mouth and planted a kiss there too. I shivered at the loud smacking sound it produced and scrunched down further in my seat. This had to be the longest goodbye in the history of goodbyes. At the rate they were kissing, I might as well kiss the rest of my Friday goodbye too. Babe, I'll see you on Monday. There was a slight edge to Liam's tone that made me glance up. He wore a forced smile and the tips of his ears were turning the same shades of red as his polo shirt. But I won't get to see you the whole weekend, Savannah sighed dramatically. Are you sure you can't get time off? I need the money, Savannah. It's not like I want to work. And anyway, it's only 2 days. Monday will be here before you know it. Fine. You have fun then. Savannah worked her bright red lips into a pout as she grabbed her belongings and got out of the car. With a loud slam, she shut the door and stalked off. Liam shook his head and ran his hands through his dark hair, grabbing onto the ends in frustration. He looked back at me with a wry smile and gestured for me to move to the front. Want to sit up here? I shrugged, but quickly switched seats. Liam never asked me to sit with him, so this was strange, but I didn't want to think too much of it. He was probably tired of feeling like an Uber driver who never got paid. I put on my seatbelt as he pulled back into the road. Then I reached for the radio dial. Do you mind? Go ahead. I turned it to my favorite top 40 station, K103.1. The female DJ introduced the next song in her loud and bubbly voice. I'd been listening to her on the radio for years, but now I felt a distant connection to her. Her sister and brother-in-law, Emma and Evan Spark, were the founders of Edenvale, and she was married to Aiden Spark, a boy band singer Mom had loved as a teenager. What a small world, right? I wish we had as much talent in our family as the Sparks did. Sure, Liam and I were both attending a performing arts school, but he was a behind-the-scenes kind of guy. He had some mad graphic design skills, but he was like Dad, as tone-deaf as could be. I was so glad I'd taken after Mom. So, Liam asked, how are your classes going? Huh? I asked about your classes. Do you like them? I had actually heard Liam the first time around, but I'd been so shocked at his question, I needed to hear it again. He was definitely acting weird today, being so nice. They're great. I like my teachers. How are yours? Pretty good. He grew quiet as we stopped at a busy intersection. Up ahead of us was the entrance to the local community college in San Jose, where several cars were driving out of the parking lot. Liam glanced over and pressed his lips together in a grimace. I guess that's where I'll be going next year. Wait, I thought you wanted to apply to the arts college in the city. Yeah, that's not going to happen anymore. Want and can't afford are two different things. Oh, I didn't know what to say. The disappointment on Liam's face made me almost want to reach over and hug him. He always seems so put together and tough. I had never thought about how our family's drama was affecting him or that he'd need to adjust his dreams for the future. That's not fair. You worked so hard to get good at graphic design. You should be able to go to the best college for it. He scoffed. Yeah, well, life's not fair, is it? It's okay. I'll figure something out. Maybe I can get an internship over the summer and gain some experience that way. Anyhow, me going to a local school means I can still live at home and keep an eye on you. I groaned. Just when I thought we were on even ground, he had to go and pull the big brother card out. Again. I turned to the passenger window and watched the sidewalk and trees blur as the car accelerated. You don't need to baby me. I'll be 16 in 7 months, Liam, which means I won't need you to drive me around anymore. Unless we have an extra car stash somewhere that I don't know about, you'll still need me to play chauffeur. Ugh, I hated when he was right, but I hated letting him get the last word in even more. Maybe it'll be me driving you around then. Ever consider that option? All the time, he glanced over at me. In my nightmares. The smirk on his face left me fuming and speechless. Why did I even bother talking to him? I pulled my phone out and scrolled through my feeds instead. Apparently, there were some things that I hated more than the internet. Liam continued, not caring that I checked out. So, what's going on with you and Bradley? Is he still in the picture? Yep, He sure was. Specifically in one photo on my feed that made my mouth go dry. He was smiling at the camera, his straight white teeth gleaming in the sunshine. And Brooklyn was at his side, with her pert nose nudging his face. A swipe to the left revealed another picture, this time of her kissing his cheek. All the blood rushed to my head, making it spin. I blinked away hot, angry tears. What did Bradley think he was doing with Brooklyn? We hadn't even officially broken up yet. How could he post that picture on social media for all the world to see? I didn't know if I was more furious with Bradley or myself for letting his actions affect me so much, but I knew I had to do something about it. Up until now, I hadn't been all that invested in the 10-day plan, especially when it came to practicing PDA at school. I didn't want to imagine Liam's face if he saw Seth and me holding hands. He never liked it when Bradley and I had shown PDA. This meant that Seth and I'd need to take our practices off campus. I quickly sent Ava and Seth a group text. Are you guys free tomorrow? Ava. Sure, what's up? Seth. Yeah, I think so. Cool, I typed back. Let's meet up. It was time to take our plan to the next level. Chapter 11. Seth. I'm so happy you're adjusting to Edenvale so quickly, Seth. Mom glanced at me as we stopped at a light, her blonde ponytail swinging. Her blue eyes, the same sky blue shade as mine, lit up with pride. I'd grown taller than her when I turned 13, so this was one of the rare times when we were eye to eye. She took the opportunity to give my cheek a gentle pat. Her eyes grew teary as a wistful smile crossed her face. You're growing into such an amazing young man, you know that? Yeah, you say that a lot, Mom, but thanks. If there was anything my mom had gotten better at in the past few years, it was gushing. She'd never been much of an expressive person before Dad came into the picture. I think being a single mom for 10 years had used up all of her energy. But after she and Dad got married a second time, it's a long story, she started smiling more and spending more time with me. I know it was because she didn't have to work as hard to make money, but it was also because she started understanding and appreciating my introverted ways. I really have Dad to thank for that. Mom also learned to give me space and to not push me to talk, like she was trying to do right now while we were driving across town to Valley Fair Mall. I could tell by the way she was tapping her fingers on the steering wheel, though, that she really wanted to ask me what was on my mind. I guess I would too if I were her. It wasn't every day that I told her I needed a ride to go shopping with two girls. I still wasn't sure if it was the shopping part or the meeting up with the opposite sex part that surprised her the most. So, tell me more about these girls you're hanging out with today. Okay, so it wasn't the idea of me shopping. It was definitely the girls. Their names are Hannah and Ava. They're sophomores too. I met them at lunch my first day. I tried to sound casual, even though my heart pounded like it wanted to leap from my chest right through my blue shirt. I was like one of those old cartoon characters who got hard eyes when they saw the girl they liked. Except for me, it was the mere thought of Hannah that got me nerve-sided. Yep, this new word I'd made up perfectly described my current state. Hannah's texts last night made it sound like she was ready to start practicing our PDA. I'd never been so nervous or excited about an assignment. But I also couldn't stop thinking about how it conflicted with my other assignment, the one where I was supposed to keep an eye on Hannah and keep other guys away from her. Technically speaking, though, me pretending to be Hannah's boyfriend was fulfilling my promise to Liam in an indirect way. I just hadn't specified how I'd be doing it. I just hoped Liam would be far, far away from the mall today. Mom drove into a large 2-story parking structure, following the half a dozen cars searching for an empty space. Even though the mall wasn't officially open for another 5 minutes, there were already several families with strollers walking toward the entrance. We found a spot near the elevators and parked. She turned toward me and smiled. I'm so glad you made friends so quickly at Edenvale. With 2 girls, no less. You never cease to surprise me, Seth. Mom, please stop. I ducked out of her reach as she tried to ruffle my hair. It wasn't a big deal for my mom to touch my hair when she cut it, but not when we were out in public where anyone could see us. Thanks for the ride. Sorry, I forgot. No touching. She chuckled, her blue eyes lighting up with amusement. Do you need any money? It's a nice gesture for the guy to treat a girl when they're on a date. I'm good, Mom. Dad gave me some, and it's not a date. Not a real one, anyway, I reminded myself. That single word, though, had started the blood flowing to my cheeks. I really needed to get my emotions under control. The last thing I wanted was to lose my cool and freak out. Right, not a date, Mom repeated. You obviously wouldn't be going out with 2 girls at once. That could get complicated. Speaking of complicated, I cringed. I knew what was coming. Mom always used the word complicated when it came to my DNA dad. Not now, Mom, please. I'm sorry, Seth, but it's important. Your dad, Richard, he's moving out of state at the end of this month. He's asking to see you before he goes. Just one time. Why? I really wanted to know why. Not that I was looking for a specific answer to convince me to go. Nothing could convince me to see Richard. Why now? Mom sighed loudly, the way she used to do when we had more bills than money to pay for them. Because he finally realizes what a jerk he's been for not wanting to be a part of your life. He doesn't expect to be your dad. He knows he lost that privilege a long time ago, but he doesn't want to be the bad guy anymore either. I know you don't want to see him. It's understandable why you feel that way, but someday when you're older, you might regret it if you don't. I just don't want you to regret it. I had to give Mom credit. She didn't try to make things sound easier or prettier than they were, and I appreciated that. I could also tell this was important to her. There was a deep line between her brows that I hadn't seen in years. She suddenly looked really tired. She'd always been one of the youngest parents among my classmates since she'd had me when she was 20, but right now, she looked a lot older than someone in her mid-30s. I hated that this was causing her to worry. Okay, I'll do it. Just one meeting, right? Relief washed over her face, and she looked like she could breathe freely again. Yes, one meeting. Would a week from today work? Next Saturday? Actually, I have plans that day. Oh? I'm going to a dance with Hannah. It's at night, though. I guess I could meet Richard before then. A dance? Sounds fancy. Mom was leaning on the center console now, her eyebrows raised. So, will the dance be considered an actual date? Yes, but not really. I regretted saying the truth as soon as the words left my mouth. Mom was hooked now, her eyes glued to my face. It's complicated. Son, I know all about complicated. Tell me more. And because I was so nerve-sided about meeting up with a girl soon, I spilled the whole story right then and there. The queasiness in my stomach didn't go away, though. It got worse. Mom was staring at me with such concern you'd have thought I told her I was going to fake marry Hannah instead of fake date her. It's not a big deal, Mom. We're just going to pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend for one day. Whose idea was this? Ava's. She's Hannah's best friend. She's trying to help Hannah by showing Bradley what he's missing out on. He really shouldn't be messing around with another girl when he's got Hannah. He has no idea how amazing she is. But it sounds like you do. Huh? Great. The smirk on Mom's face told me I said too much. She's cool, as a friend. You like her, don't you, Seth? Leave it to Mom to be direct. I dropped my gaze, trying to look everywhere but at her. I'd never lied to my mom before, at least not when it mattered. Sure, there were the nights when I told her I hadn't stayed up too late reading with a flashlight under my covers, but that was kid stuff. The feelings I had for Hannah were real and deep and as close to grown-up as I'd ever experienced. I finally met her eyes and nodded. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I'm not her type. Not her type? How could that be? You're sweet, kind, and considerate. A real gentleman. That's every girl's type. Mom shook her head, obviously annoyed. I was kind of happy she was upset for me, but it was also weird to be talking about girls with her. What is her type, then? I had no idea what Bradley was like, but I could imagine what a guy worthy of dating Hannah Mitchell must be like. You know, tall, dark, and handsome, popular and confident, the star quarterback or class president, someone cool like that. Definitely not someone quiet, shy, and awkward like me. Liam had confirmed that. Seth, don't you dare listen to what the world says about you. Who's cool or not cool? There are plenty of girls who would love to have a boyfriend, and someday a husband like you. You have so much to offer. You're the real deal. All the things that you think matter now, popularity, flashiness, even looks, won't matter 5-10 years from now. Once high school is over, everyone starts at square one again. But you, son, you'll always have your heart and character to hold on to. Yep, she was good at gushing, and I would have let her go on more, but I saw Hannah and Eva walk by on their way to the mall entrance. I gotta go, Mom. They're here. Okay, give us a call when you're ready to be picked up. And Seth, please make wise choices. I squeezed out a smile as I climbed out of the car. It was probably a little late for that piece of advice. Chapter 12. Hannah. I used to love coming to the mall. That was when our family had money. Nowadays, I didn't feel the same excitement and rush when I saw a cute top or a pair of to-die-for shoes in a store window, and I had to keep on walking. I was pretty sure that window shopping was not for people who actually like to shop. That's why I'd been avoiding this place like the plague. That and the fact that I didn't want to run into anyone from my old school. Oh, how I wished Eva had picked anywhere but here to practice. Are you sure the food court is the best place to do this? I asked, glancing around the food court area. Even though the mall had opened not too long ago, people were already lining up to order at the different restaurants. Saturday was the busiest day for Valley Fair, and with back-to-back school sales still going on, the mall was already filling up with couples and families with strollers and kids in tow. It's so busy and noisy. That's why it's the perfect place to practice. Eva glared at me with her hands on her hips. Even with her annoyed expression, she looked pretty today with her hair pulled back and a red headband. She gestured for me and Seth to come closer. You guys can blend in with the crowd and stay hidden in case Liam happens to walk by. Oh, right. I'd almost forgotten about Liam. For some reason, he had decided to tag along with us. Yes, I'd asked him to give me and Eva a ride to the mall, but he was the one who said he'd stick around until we needed to go home. I didn't know what was going on with my brother, but he was not being himself. Not only had he called in sick to work, Liam never played hooky, he was willingly hanging out at a mall. Liam in a mall was as unheard of as my grandpa at a Taylor Swift concert. I had the sneaking suspicion he wanted to keep an eye on me and make sure I didn't charge anything on the credit card Mom had lent me. Liam's here? Seth's eyes bugged out when he heard my brother's name. Like, in the mall? Yeah, but I'm sure he's off in some corner sleeping on a bench by now. My answer didn't seem to make Seth feel any better. He swallowed so slowly I could see his Adam's apple bobbing up and down. Okay, well, let's get this over with. What do we practice first? Yeah. What's on the agenda, Aves? I tried to sound casual, even though deep down, I couldn't help but dwell on Seth's words. Let's get this over with? This was the first time that I realized maybe he didn't want to be my pretend boyfriend. Maybe this whole doing a favor for me thing was a drag for him. It was a lot to ask of him now that I thought about it. Let's just do what we need to do and get out of here. I'm sure Seth has other stuff he'd rather be doing today. Seth gave me a funny look, but didn't say anything. Soon Ava started talking, and all our attention focused on her. Her brown eyes lit up as she rubbed her hands together. I was thinking you guys should share some food and just talk. Get to know each other, you know? Make eye contact, all that good stuff. Why don't you guys go line up and buy something? Go on now. Yes, ma'am. Seth's tone was so serious, it sounded like he was answering a drill sergeant, not a teenage girl. What would you like, Hannah? My treat. Oh, it's okay. You don't have to. Ow! I shot Ava a mean look and rubbed the place along my arm where she'd elbowed me. Seth's already doing me a huge favor. He shouldn't have to spend his money on me. He's your boyfriend. Ava said those 3 words like they explained everything. Let him act like one. It's cool, Hannah. Really, I don't mind. Seth spoke up on the other side of me. So it's kind of early for food, but we could get something to drink. Yeah, sure. I could go for some boba tea. Sounds good. I love boba. Awesome! Ava gave us a thumbs up. Oh, and hold hands while you're at it. Seth and I froze at this command until Ava's death stare melted the invisible barrier between us. I held out my hand to him, palm up. He reached over, pausing for a moment in midair before wrapping his hand around mine. I was surprised to see my hand disappear completely in his, but even more surprised at my body's response as my fingers settled into Seth's strong grasp. Light tingles formed in my skin. It reminded me of the times I'd slept funny and woke up with my hand numb. But there was nothing numb about this situation. I was very much awake, and my heart was pounding like a strong bass beat. Was Seth feeling what I was feeling? I glanced up, wanting to see his reaction, but he was already pulling me along to the boba tea kiosk at the center of the food court. The line was short with only another couple in front of us who seemed to be having a hard time figuring out their order. I knew exactly what I wanted, though. I got the same drink every time. Or I used to. I hadn't been out to eat for months now. Seth tugged my hand gently and gestured at the menu hanging above us. What would you like? Mango green tea with boba. 25% ice and 50% sugar. Wow, you didn't even have to think about it. I never know what to order at these places besides a boba. Want me to order for you? Sure, I wouldn't mind that at all. I was starting to think that there were a lot of things Seth didn't mind. He seemed like one of those guys who always had a smile on his face, who never complained, and had no problem putting other people's needs before his own. He was so different from Bradley, who might look bomb on the outside, but his heart wasn't so flawless. Even when we were dating, he never paid for me when we went out to eat. I hadn't minded so much since our family still had money then, but he also hadn't done any of the other thoughtful things I'd imagined a boyfriend doing, like opening doors or pulling my chair out for me. Not that Seth had done either of those yet, but I imagined he was the kind of guy who would. The kind of guy who resembled male leads in romance books. Grammy loved to read the ones written by Brandon Spark, another talented member of the Spark family, and tell me about them. His characters were so sweet and swoony. I used to think those guys only existed in fiction. But maybe I was wrong, because here was one living and breathing right beside me. And I had to admit, there was something cute about him. That's the first thing I thought of when Seth showed up at the mall. He was wearing a shirt that matched his blue eyes. Now that I'd known him for a couple of days, I started to notice little things about him. The way one corner of his mouth quirked up when he was talking, or that he had a tendency to slouch whenever he was sitting, but his back would straighten as soon as he stood up. It was like his confidence came from his feet touching the floor. And how good he smelled, like fresh laundry straight from the dryer. I took a deep breath, enjoying the scent, when a man cleared his throat. I looked up to see the guy running the kiosk drumming his fingers on the countertop. The paper hat on top of his balding head shifted as he glared down his nose at me. It's our turn, Hannah. Seth gave me another one of his sweet smiles and squeezed my hand, starting another round of tingles along my fingers. The sensation traveled up my arm and spread a burst of warmth through my chest. Good gravy, I could hardly breathe for a second as my head spun with a crazy realization. It couldn't be. Could it? I think I was starting to have feelings for Seth. Chapter 13. Seth. I was pretty sure I was holding hands the wrong way. I mean, what other explanation could there be for Hannah's weird behavior? Ever since we'd gotten our teas, mango for her and passion fruit for me, which was an excellent pick, she'd been avoiding my eyes. I guess I didn't expect her to look my way all the time when we walked around the mall, but at least once in a while. That's what people did when they had a conversation, right? Or maybe she was getting bored of hearing about my history of dance class. Or she could only do a couple of things at once, in this case, walk and drink. So that left out talking, because she wasn't doing much of that either. It had to be my hand-holding skills, or lack of them. Hannah, wait up a second. I stopped walking and turned around so that I could ask Ava for her opinion. She had been following a couple of feet behind, giving us space, in her words, to be a couple. I figured if there was anyone who had a good idea of how I was doing, it would be our official/unofficial dating coach. Ava, how are we doing? You're doing fine. She snapped her gum a few times. You guys look totally legit from where I'm standing. How about the way I'm holding Hannah's hand? Is it okay? Ava looked like she was on the verge of laughing. There's really no wrong way to hold hands, but yeah, you're good. I nodded, feeling slightly better about the situation. Cool. I just want to make sure I'm doing it right. I've never actually held hands with a girl before. A girl who wasn't related to me, I mean. I hold my sister's hand all the time when we cross the street. This," I gestured to Hannah's and my joined hands, "is pretty different." Hannah spoke up for the first time in minutes. "I'm your first?" I winced. The two of them exchanged a surprised look that made my stomach sink with regret. I should have thought it through before I blurted out how inexperienced I was. If I wasn't a loser in Hannah's eyes before, I was now. Pretty lame, huh? No, not at all. Hannah gave me a smile that bordered on pity. I could tell she was trying to hold back her shock. It was nice to have her finally looking at me and talking to me again, but it was also embarrassing. This was just another confirmation that I was totally not her type. There's no way in this universe that a girl like Hannah would ever be interested in me. I mean, come on. She was too good to be true with her beautiful red hair, adorable face, and perfect personality. The blue skirt she wore today fit her so well and showed off her legs. To top it all off, she had such a big heart. She was still trying to make me feel better. I didn't have a boyfriend until last year, and Ava's never kissed a guy. "Hannah!" Ava yelped. Her eyes widened in exasperation as she looked around us. "If I wanted that to be broadcasted for everyone to hear, I'd do it myself." Hearing about Ava's lack of experience made me feel loads better, especially since we were burying our secrets in the middle of a busy mall. Thank goodness, the only people nearby were older folks who were too busy chasing after the kids to listen to our conversation. I haven't kissed anyone either, so don't feel bad. "I'm just waiting for the right guy." Ava crossed her arms over her white tank top and smirked. "Kissing's a big deal." "It is," I agreed enthusiastically. Kids my age probably didn't think waiting for the right person to kiss was cool, but I'd heard enough about my own parents' stories to know better. My dad's actually only kissed one woman in his life, my mom. It sounds kind of old school, but I think it's pretty special. Ava's jaw dropped. "So you're waiting for your wedding day to kiss someone? I wasn't thinking that far." "Oh, I didn't mean that. I just don't want to kiss anybody just for the sake of kissing them, you know?" I wasn't sure if the girls were getting my point, but I hope so. I'd just gone from feeling lame to cool and didn't want to go back again. "I get it." Hannah glanced up at me, her blue eyes bright. "You wouldn't want to play kissing games because those kisses wouldn't mean anything to you." "Yeah, exactly." My heart swelled to know Hannah got me. Just having her smile at me made me feel like the most popular kid in the world, especially since it was my hand she was holding. I squeezed hers, soaking in the sensation of her soft skin. Now that I knew I was doing a decent job at hand-holding, I wasn't as worried. I just hoped Hannah would keep smiling at me. "All right." Ava clapped her hands, all business again. "Now that we've got all that cleared up, let's try something new. Keep walking, but this time, put your arms around each other." I let go of Hannah's hand and stood there like an idiot as I tried to figure out Ava's command. I was also stalling for time. If I'd been stressed about holding her hand, I was pretty sure I was on the verge of having a heart attack at the thought of our bodies touching. It was a good thing we weren't holding hands anymore because mine were growing clammier by the minute. "Come on, Han, put your arm around Seth's waist," Ava directed her. "And Seth, put your arm around Hannah's shoulders. Got it?" I gulped as Hannah wrapped her arm around my back and leaned into my side. Her sweet scent immediately filled my senses, making my head spin. My arm went up around her shoulders as if I'd done this every day of my life. It just felt right and natural, how she fit so perfectly against me. If I thought holding hands with Hannah was amazing, this was beyond my imagination. It was surreal, mind-blowing, and totally epic. So epic, my body turned to mush. The next thing I knew, I'd lost my grip on my tea. The cold plastic cup slipped from my hand, along with my dreams of playing it cool. Talk about epic. #epic fail. The cup landed on the tile floor, bouncing twice before coming to rest on its side. Thankfully, it was half full and the lid had stayed on, so only a few drops spilled out. Still, I was mortified. Eva picked up my cup and returned it to me with a crease between her brows. "You need to work on your multitasking." "Thanks, that's a good idea." I let out a weak laugh. "I should wipe that up." "I'll take care of it. I have some tissues in my purse." "You guys keep walking." Eva stepped back and gestured for us to go ahead of her. "You sure, Aves?" Hannah asked. "Yeah, it'll just take a second." I was about to thank Ava again for her help when I spotted a familiar face, about 15 feet away approaching us. A face that filled me with fear and thoughts of hairy eyeballs. I ducked down, pulling Hannah with me. "It's Liam!" Hannah sucked in a sharp breath and turned around for a look. Her complexion immediately paled. "Did he see us?" Ava whisper-shouted out of the corner of her mouth. "You guys go! I'll deal with him!" Ava didn't have to tell us twice. Hannah found my hand and pulled me along, both of us eager to escape her brother's wrath. Chapter 14. Hannah. Seth and I ran, still holding hands, past several clothing stores. In the past, I would have stopped to shop at each one, but there was no time now to gawk over the cute shorts or dresses in the windows. We were on a mission. The goal, to get as far away from Liam's overprotective eyes as fast as possible. We came to the part of the mall's second floor, where it broke off into a perpendicular path. Turning to the left, we headed down the brightly lit walkway. One of my favorite stores happened to be the next one we passed. I stopped to throw an empty teacup into a recycling bin. Seth did the same. Then I pulled Seth into Lovesack. "We'll be safe here." Seth puffed up his cheeks and blew out a heavy breath. He reminded me of a squirrel storing up nuts for the winter. A cuter version of a squirrel, though. He frowned as he glanced through the store window. "Only until your brother finds us. Maybe we shouldn't have run. Running only makes us look guilty." We weren't doing anything wrong. But it doesn't matter if we're guilty or not. Liam's always asking too many questions, and he's never satisfied with any of the answers I give him. It's just easier this way. Seth didn't seem convinced. Now he looked like a squirrel being chased by a dog. I just don't want to get on Liam's bad side. I have a feeling it's too late, though. "You won't. If he's going to get upset at anyone, it'll be me." I shrugged, not really caring what my brother thought anymore. Mom didn't care who I hung out with. Why should Liam? Let's forget about him and try out some beanbags. Seth looked around the store with wide eyes, finally aware of his surroundings. What is this place? It's the only shop with the most amazing furniture. My family used to have a couple of the couches in the guest rooms, and I have my own pillow sack for my room, like that one over there. I pointed to a beanbag that was shaped like a canoe in the far corner of the store. Mine was the cutest shade of blue, like cotton candy. I used to sit on it all the time when I listened to music. What happened to it? My parents sold it before we moved. They sold almost everything we owned. We needed the money, and our new place is a lot smaller, so it wouldn't have fit anyway. I let go of Seth's hand and wandered over to one of the large round beanbags that was made for multiple people. It was so high, around 4 feet tall, that I had to use both hands to lift myself into it. As soon as I sat down, I leaned back and let my body sink into the foam cushion. I really miss it, though. "You look like you're being eaten alive." Seth grinned at me, that cute smile of his making my insides flutter. "It's super comfortable. Here, try it out." I scooted over to the side to make room for him. Seth sat down beside me and sighed happily. "Sweet. It's like sitting on a cloud, or what I imagine sitting on a cloud must feel like." "Yep, just like a cloud. Cloud 9 to be exact." The flutters in my stomach turned into full-on flapping as we turned to face each other. With our heads so close, I could see my reflection in Seth's eyes. The intensity between us grew, making my cheeks flush. Seth had this way of looking at me that made me feel like I was the only girl in the room. It sounded so cliché, but that's how I felt. He wasn't exactly the type of guy I usually went for, but that's what made him interesting. There was a certain appeal to being sweet and genuine, and the fact that I was the first girl to hold his hand made me feel special. "I'm really glad we met, Seth. You're not like any guy I know." His brows shot up. "Is that a good thing?" "A very good thing." "I'm glad we met too." Seth's cheeks turned pink as one side of his mouth curved up. "You're not like any girl I've ever known either. Not that I've had many friends who were girls. You're really easy to talk to." "I feel the same way. I guess it's because we have stuff in common, like our dads." I didn't usually like talking about what Dad had done or where he was, but with Seth, it was different. I didn't feel a need to hide or pretend to be someone I wasn't. "For sure. He grew quiet and thoughtful as he rested one hand behind his head. My dad, the one who went to jail, he wants to see me. The thing is, he never wanted anything to do with me before, but my mom says he's changed and that I should give him a chance. Do you think I should? I felt so bad for Seth. His voice was a little shaky and I could tell how torn he felt over this. It had to be so hard to know your own dad hadn't wanted you. Mine had messed up big time, but at least I knew he loved me. I didn't know what to tell Seth. But I remembered something Grammy had told me after Dad went to jail. My Grammy says that when we don't understand why people do what they do, it always helps to put ourselves in their shoes. If you were your dad, how would you feel? Seth blinked in surprise. I never tried seeing things from his side before. It's easier to not think of him as a person with feelings. It makes it harder to dislike him, huh? Yeah. He let out a long sigh, but his expression was more hopeful. I feel better about this. Thanks for listening, Hannah. I really appreciate it. No problem. I stared at his profile as he looked up at the ceiling with a small smile. Seeing Seth happy made me happy. It was strange how I cared so much about him already. I could have stayed there on that beanbag with Seth for the rest of the day if it wasn't for the fact that there was a kid trying to climb into it. She was probably 3 or 4 with dark hair and eyes, and she had her hands on my leg using me as leverage. I looked over at Seth and laughed. I think someone wants our spot. His eyes widened when he spotted the girl. Oh, hey, let me help you. Seth pushed himself off the beanbag, then picked the girl up. He plopped her down beside me as the girl's mom, who was checking out a beanbag next to us, thanked him. Next, he offered me his hand like a perfect gentleman. Even after he helped me to my feet, he didn't let go. I didn't know if he was practicing again or maybe he was being carried away with the pretending. I knew I was. A girl could get used to this kind of treatment. I followed Seth out of the store, feeling more comfortable than ever with him. Do you think we should go look for Ava now? He asked as he glanced in the direction we'd come from. Let me text her and ask if the coast is clear. I took my phone out and sent her a message, using one hand so I could still hold Seth's, and waited for a reply. Ava's text came through after a few seconds. Leo knows you're with Seth and he's okay with it. Weird, right? He's also buying me a sushi burrito for lunch. Double weird. Just meet us at the food court when you're done. My jaw about hit the floor. I held my phone up to show Seth a message. I think Liam's been abducted by aliens and I just got a new, much nicer clone for a brother. Seth's head tipped towards mine to get a closer look. When he chuckled, his warm breath tickled my ear, making my heart skip. Looks like Ava's got things under control. I guess we can practice a little more on our way back. Practice? Yeah, sure. My stomach sank. Just when I was losing myself in the way Seth looked at me and held my hand, he had to mention the P word. There was no doubt about his intentions now. We were only practicing our fake relationship. I had to remind myself that none of this was real. Chapter 15. Seth. We took the long way back to the food court. It was my idea, so Hannah and I would have more time to practice our PDA. We held hands part of the way, then the other part with our arms around each other. I was pretty proud of my brilliant plan. When else would I get to be so close to the girl I liked? And boy, did I like Hannah. It was so comfortable with her. We walked in sync like we'd been dating for weeks, or even months. Touching her started feeling like breathing. I didn't even need to think about it. My nerves were gone, especially after our talk at the beanbag store. The way she'd listened and said exactly what I needed to hear did something in me. I knew I didn't need to try hard to be someone I wasn't with her. She seemed to accept me just the way I was. That was more acceptance than I'd felt in a long, long time. We passed a clothing shop with a colorful display in the window. 3 faceless mannequins, each with a different outfit on, stood under a banner that read, "Back to School Sale." Hannah stopped to look at the one in the middle, her gaze fixed on an emerald green dress. It was strapless with sequins on the body, and a puffy skirt that reminded me of my sister's tutu. That's pretty. I bet it'd look great on you. Hannah's pink lips curved into a sweet smile. I really love the color and the style. Why don't you try it on? You need a dress for the dance, right? I started heading into the store, taking Hannah along with me. Seth, I can't. She pulled me back and we both stopped next to a rack of shirts. I don't have the money to buy a new dress. Oh, I should have thought before I opened my big mouth. We'd been having such a great time, but now I felt like a jerk. I totally embarrassed Hannah. Her cheeks were bright red. Sorry, I didn't realize. It's okay, Seth. Sometimes I forget we're poor now, too. I led her out of the store, not wanting to make her more uncomfortable. Are you guys okay, though? I mean, do you have enough for a place to stay and for food? She nodded quickly. Yeah, we're good. I don't mean we're poor, just poor in comparison to what we used to have. My dad was a CFO at a tech company, so we had a pretty good life. That's all I had ever known. We used to eat out all the time and go on vacations, and I could buy whatever I wanted, when I wanted. Nowadays, it's a treat just to go out for boba. That's tough. It's like your whole life changed overnight. Yeah, I went from being one of the most popular girls at school to, she shrugged, basically nothing. I lost everything. That sucks. She nodded. The worst part is, I don't know if I'll ever get any of it back. If I'll ever be the person I was before. If my parents will be as happy as they used to be, or if my dad will ever be able to find another job again. I'm scared my dad's insider trading scandal will follow our family for the rest of our lives. I winced. That sounded pretty bad. I didn't know what to say to make Hannah feel better except to share my own story. I'd never planned on telling anyone in Edenvale about my past, but Hannah was different. I knew I could trust her. I kinda know what you mean. Hannah eyed me curiously. How? My grandfather, the one who's blood related, he was a senator. Things got pretty crazy when he tried to run for re-election. Some secrets came out about his past and how he had used a lot of taxpayer money illegally. Wait, your grandfather is Senator Weaver? Yep, that's why I had to change schools. People found out I was related to him. Oh man, I thought I had it bad, but your story is way worse. My dad only made the local news, but your grandfather was like national news. I smirked. Glad I could make you feel better. Sorry, I didn't mean it that way. Hannah squeezed my hand and gave me an apologetic smile. It just puts things in perspective, you know? I really shouldn't be complaining. It's okay to still hate the situation you're in. Both of us got thrown into messes we didn't make. I shrugged and added, I think that gives us the right to complain a little bit. Thanks, Seth. You really do get how I feel. Hannah's smile almost made the whole past year of bullying that I'd endured worth it. Maybe not the part where I'd been thrown into a dumpster behind the school and had to wait 3 hours before a janitor found me. Nothing was worth the months of nightmares I'd had after that incident, but still, in this time and place, I was glad I'd had to change schools. How else would I have met Hannah? It was strange and amazing how things worked out. I was starting to wonder if maybe this fake relationship thing between us could someday turn into something real. Even though I wasn't the kind of guy Hannah usually dated, there was no denying how well we connected. Maybe after next Saturday's dance, after Bradley was officially out of the picture, I could talk to her about us. Because I was sure we'd make an awesome us. We kept walking down the last stretch of the mall's second story, which would lead us to the food court. With more people shopping now, we had to maneuver our way around them. I felt like we were dancing as we weaved our way around kiosks, other couples holding hands, and groups of giggly preteen girls. All the while, though, we stayed in sync, moving to the rhythm of my happily beating heart. I was feeling so good about myself and about me and Hannah that I didn't even realize she'd stopped walking until my hand jerked out of her grasp. Hannah Mitchell, is that you? A high-pitched, nasally voice called out to us. I spotted a tall, middle-aged blonde woman walking over in an outfit that looked much too fancy and uncomfortable for shopping. She wore a lacy blouse with black pants and red heels. Her blazer hung from her shoulders like an accessory, and she held a white ball of fur to her chest. She walked like a model with one foot in front of the other, as if she owned the place. With all the bling she was wearing on her fingers, I had a feeling she had enough money to buy out several stores in the mall. There was a young girl, probably 12 or 13, beside her, carrying several shopping bags. She was dressed more casually in shorts and a tank top, but they looked like name-brand clothes. When they reached us, I stepped aside to allow the two of them more room. The woman greeted Hannah with air kisses on both sides of her cheeks. "Why, dear, it's a surprise to see you. How have you been?" Hannah seemed dazed and unable to speak for a second. She finally snapped out of it when the fluff ball, at a closer glance I realized it was a teacup Pomeranian, barked. "Mrs. Price, hi! I'm fine, how are you? Shelby, it's good to see you." Hannah gave the young girl a hug. "I love what you've done with your hair." Shelby beamed as she tugged at the lock of pink-dyed hair that was clipped up on one side of her head. "Thanks, I didn't know if I should go with pink or blue. I finally decided on pink since my dress for this weekend's dance is pink. You're coming, right?" "Shelby, don't you remember what your brother said?" The older woman interrupted before Hannah could answer. She gave Hannah a smile of pity. "It's all right, dear. I understand completely why you don't want to see your old classmates. It's a delicate situation that you're in. I don't blame you for wanting to stay home." My eyes grew wide as I finally realized who these people were: Bradley's mom and sister. What was more surprising was the fact that it sounded like Bradley had lied to his family about why Hannah wasn't going to the dance. I could see the shock on Hannah's face too, as her cheeks turned pink. "I thought Bradley—" "Never mind." Hannah's voice trailed off as she chewed her lower lip. I actually decided to go after all. I found a new dress too that's perfect for the dance." One of Mrs. Price's perfectly groomed brows arched. "Is that so? I'm afraid Bradley's already asked Brooklyn to go in your place. Without him taking you, how do you plan on getting into the country club?" The panic on Hannah's face made my chest tighten. I couldn't stand to see her be put on the spot like that, especially when she didn't deserve it. So I stepped forward and offered Mrs. Price my hand. "Hi there, I'll be taking Hannah to the dance." Mrs. Price gave me a quick once-over, looking unimpressed. "And who are you?" I took a deep breath and introduced myself. "I'm Seth Spark. My uncle and aunt are Evan and Emma Spark." All three of their mouths fell open, making heat rush up my neck. It was too late now, but I wondered if I just made one of the most foolish decisions of my life. Chapter 16. Hannah. We all stared at Seth like he just said he was related to two of the hottest stars on television. Because he had. I couldn't believe he hadn't mentioned it to me after all we talked about. I picked up my jaw and tried to act normal like I'd known this piece of information already, but Mrs. Price and Shelby were both speechless. Only for a minute, though. Once Shelby got over her shock, she started bouncing on her toes and hyperventilating. "You're related to them?" Shelby squealed so loud she made several heads around us turn. "Is Evan as dreamy in person? Is Emma's hair color real? She's so gorgeous. Do you think you can get us a tour of their set?" Seth was turning redder by the second, especially since Shelby had attached herself to his arm. He squeezed out a smile and shrugged like this wasn't a big deal, which was crazy because it was a super big deal. If we were alone, I would have started fangirling too. Somehow, Seth played it cool. "I guess some people might call Uncle Evan dreamy. I'm pretty sure Aunt Emma's hair has always been that shade of red. And I might be able to ask about getting you passes to the studio." Mrs. Price's hazel eyes lit up. They reminded me so much of Bradley's, except hers had extra long lash extensions that looked like spider legs. She leaned over and placed her perfectly manicured hand on Seth's arm. "That will be lovely, Sid. Our family loves the show." "It's Seth." My voice came out a little louder than I'd intended. I was feeling protective of Seth, especially after he'd come to my rescue. I'd been so thrown off by the fact that Bradley had lied to me about his mom forcing him to take Brooklyn to the dance that I hadn't been able to think straight. But Seth had saved the day and also my reputation. I couldn't thank him enough. His name's Seth, not Sid. Mochi, the adorable puppy Mrs. Price had gotten last Christmas, barked like he was agreeing with me. Mrs. Price brushed off my comment with a wave of her hand. "Yes, Seth, that's what I said." I suppressed the strong urge I had to roll my eyes. Mrs. Price might have been friends with Mom for years, but they were nothing alike. Maybe that's how they'd gotten along so well, but I could tell her bold and brash personality was overwhelming Seth, who looked like he wished the ground would open up and swallow him whole. I quickly took his hand, ready to save him now. It was nice to see you guys, but Seth and I have to go. Shelby pouted, but let go Seth's arm. She was a sweet girl, someone I used to see as a little sister. I felt bad we didn't hang out anymore. She gave me a longing look. See you on Saturday, Hannah? I reached over to give her a quick hug. For sure. I can't wait to see your dress. Flashing Seth a cheeky smile, Mrs. Price flipped her hair over one shoulder before walking off with Shelby. Seth released a long breath and swiped at his forehead. He looked about ready to collapse. That was interesting. You can say that again. I did roll my eyes this time, then pulled him to the side of the walkway so we weren't blocking traffic anymore. The fragrances coming from the lotion shop we were standing outside of hung in the air like a thick fog. The sweet floral scents made me wish we were outside enjoying the last few days of summer instead of stuck inside the mall. I'm sorry about that. I had no idea we'd run into Bradley's mom and sister here. I don't mind seeing Shelby, but her mom? She's something else. I knew it was better to hold my tongue than to say what I really thought of Mrs. Price. Seth shook his head adamantly. It's okay, I just felt bad about the way she was talking to you. Has she always been like that? Or is it only after your family had to, move? I sighed as I thought back to before Dad's arrest. Things had changed a lot since then. She was always opinionated, but I guess we were on her good side then. I'm surprised she hasn't unfriended my parents yet, like on Facebook. I get the feeling she only wants to be associated with us so she can act like she knows what's going on and gossip behind our backs. That's not cool. Seth let go of my hand and brought his arm around my shoulder instead. He gave me a side hug that made my stomach drop. He was getting really good at PDA. I know it's not nice to brag, but I kind of liked making her speechless, even if it was only for a second. I glanced up surprised to hear the pride in Seth's voice. You totally did. Did you see the way her tongue hung out of her mouth? She looked like her dog. Seth burst out laughing. The corner of his eyes crinkled in a way that made him look even cuter than usual. I found myself staring at him like I was seeing him for the first time. It made sense that he was related to Evan Spark. His family had hit the jackpot in the looks department. You look a lot like your uncle. I can't believe I didn't see it before. Seth dropped his arm and stuck his hands in his pocket. His expression suddenly grew serious. Not really. We're not blood related. He's my stepdad's brother. Oh, my bad. I assumed you were. It's okay. The Sparks have always treated me and my mom like blood, though, and Dad says I'm officially a Spark since he adopted me. Then why do you go by Seth Montgomery at school? If I was related to someone famous, I'd want everyone to know. That's the thing. I don't want the kids at Edenvale to think I got special treatment because I'm related to the founders. I didn't get any, he added quickly. I had to apply to the school just like everyone else. I nodded. It was obvious Seth wasn't an attention hogger. Now that I knew him better, I could tell it was more than him being shy. He was humble and down to earth, and so much more mature than Bradley. I like that about you. So many kids try to be someone they're not. But you're okay being you. He shrugged. I've never liked being in the spotlight. Dancing's another story, though. That's the only time I'm okay with people looking at me. I really can't wait to see you dance. Our gazes locked and he gave me a smile that made my stomach do a flip. I wondered if he minded me looking at him because if he did, he sure didn't have a problem meeting my eyes. I smiled back, just happy to be spending time with someone as amazing as him. And now that I knew Seth was related to Evan and Emma Spark, I wanted to hang out with him even longer and get all the inside information I could. I grabbed his arm as we started walking again towards the food court. Okay, you have to tell me everything you know about your uncle and aunt. I'm dying to hear about them. Oh, and about your other uncle, too. My mom said Aiden Sparks' band, Heartland, was like the boy band back in the day. Almost as big as One Direction used to be. I can't believe you're related to all of them. Seth blinked quickly. He was probably surprised by my enthusiasm. But come on, this was a big deal. He couldn't tell me about his famous relatives and not expect some questions. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's freaking awesome! A light bulb suddenly went off in my head. You said your dad's an author. He's Brandon Spark, isn't he? Yep, that's him. My Grammy loves him. She went to a book signing he had a few years back, and get this, she fainted when he was reading an excerpt from one of his books. They had to call the paramedics and everything. No kidding. We passed the boba tea kiosk we'd been at earlier, and I spotted the back of Ava and Liam's head. They were sitting side by side at one of the square tables near the sushi burrito restaurant. I squealed just thinking about what Ava's reaction would be like once I told her about Seth's connections. I can't wait to tell Aves. She's gonna faint! I ran the last 10 feet toward their table, leaving Seth behind to catch up. I thought I heard him calling me, but when I looked back, he just smiled. This time the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. I wondered what that was about, but I figured he was thinking about Liam seeing him with me. He didn't have to worry though. With his secret identity revealed, Seth was going to be the most popular kid around. Chapter 17. Seth. I felt like I just let loose a wild beast, like I'd started rolling a snowball off the top of a mountain and was watching it gather speed to form a huge, gigantic avalanche, and there was no way of stopping it as it plowed over everything in its path, except that this beast was a super sweet teen girl who just morphed into a super hyper fangirl. My whole body tensed as I followed after Hannah, who was about to unleash all of her excitement on Ava. Oh, and Liam. I couldn't forget about Liam. I didn't know which person I was more afraid of at this point, Hannah or Liam, and the damage they might do. I'd wanted to tell Hannah to keep my Spark identity a secret, but I couldn't bring myself to burst her bubble. She'd been so happy and relieved after we'd made Mrs. Price speechless. I didn't want to see her stop smiling. I figured I could ask both her and Ava to keep things on the down low at school. They were my two best friends at Edenvale, so it seemed right that they knew the truth. Liam, though, I didn't want him to stop me from being Hannah's friend. I bet he had a dozen questions for me about why I'd run off with Hannah earlier, or why I was even at the mall. I tried to keep my breathing slow and steady and did my best to not look guilty, but man, it was hard to stay calm with adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had so much pent-up energy in my body from my head to my toes. What I really wanted to do was move my feet and spin and dance out all my nerves, not come face to face with the overprotective brother of the girl I liked. When I walked up to the table, Liam did one of those "I'm too cool to smile" head nods in my direction. "Hey Seth, what's up?" "Not much. Just hanging out at the mall." My mouth was so dry, I barely got the words out. Liam nodded again, then turned his attention to the girls who were talking a mile a minute. I squeezed out a smile, relieved to have escaped his wrath. But now I was a little scared of the way Ava was staring at me. Her eyes were open so wide, they looked like 2 brown M&Ms floating in pools of milk. "What's going on?" "Seth, how could you keep that totally important piece of information from us?" Ava gestured for me to take the seat across from her next to Hannah. "Tell us everything," she commanded, dragging out every syllable possible. So I did, or as much as I could without spilling any really personal stuff. I told them how my uncles and aunt were about as normal as anyone they knew, except that they appeared on tabloid magazines once in a while, or make that every day for Uncle Evan and Aunt Emma. Other than that, they were as down-to-earth and ordinary as me. Okay, I didn't actually say that last part out loud, but that's what I hoped Hannah and Ava, especially Hannah, understood. I didn't want Hannah to get the wrong idea about who I was. "That's it?" Ava looked disappointed when I was done talking. "But don't you get to go to movie premieres and walk the red carpet with them? What about other actors? Have you met anyone else?" "Yeah, Seth," Hannah added. "Tell us." Hannah then leaned over and placed her hand on my arm. The spot she touched immediately warmed, heating up my whole body. I noticed Liam's gaze dart over. He'd been looking at his phone this whole time and zero in on Hannah's hand. When his eyebrow arched a little, I pulled my arm away and pretended to scratch the back of my neck. Maybe I wasn't completely out of the clear with Liam. Either way, I knew from that point that I needed to keep my distance from Hannah when we were around her brother. I quickly jumped in to fill the silence in our conversation. I met the other guys from Heartland once at Uncle Aiden and Aunt Abby's wedding, but I've never been to a movie premiere or anything like that. It's not really my parents' thing. They prefer staying home. Oh, that's a bummer, Hannah frowned. She looked really let down, like a tire that had lost all of its air. I hated seeing her like that. It made me feel a lot less cool, especially with Liam glaring at me like I'd physically poked a hole in his sister's heart. What about other famous people? Like singers. Isn't your aunt a DJ on the radio? Aunt Abby? Yeah, I think she meets singers when she hosts concerts in the city. Ava waved her hand in the air like she wanted me to say more. Which singers? We need names, Seth! I bit my lower lip as I thought. Honestly, I couldn't remember who Aunt Abby had mentioned before. She talked a lot, so it was hard to keep up with her sometimes. I'm not sure. Maybe Taylor Swift? The name slipped off my tongue before I could think about the effect those two words would produce. Both Hannah and Ava's jaws dropped. Then they reached across the table for each other's hands and squealed like little kids on Christmas morning. Liam rolled his eyes, but even he seemed interested in what I had to say now. All three of them turned to look at me expectantly. I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. That's pretty much what happened whenever I got put on the spot, or when I didn't exactly tell the truth. Aunt Abby was going to interview Taylor Swift the last time she came to the Bay Area on tour, but then she came down with the flu and had to let her partner do it instead. I hadn't meant to lie, but I didn't want to disappoint Hannah or Ava. I knew that for girls, the opinions of their bestie mattered a lot, and Hannah's opinion of me mattered the most. Hannah propped her elbows on the table and rested her chin on her hands. Wow, your family is so cool. So cool, Ava repeated with an eager nod. I wish my family was half as interesting. Right? Hannah sighed. At least we can live vicariously through you, Seth. We're only 2 degrees separated from Evan and Emma Spark, and 3 degrees from Tay-Tay. Isn't that crazy? It's not that big of a deal. At least I didn't want it to be. My chest tightened when both girls stared at me in disbelief. I might as well have said the earth was flat. I just mean that people are people, Ava shook her head, unconvinced. But some people have way more followers on Instagram, millions more, and make tons more money than I'll ever see in a lifetime. That puts celebrities in a whole other category of cool. Seriously, Hannah's eyes opened wide in exasperation. I still can't believe you didn't tell us, Seth. Like I said, I didn't want to make it a big deal. So if you guys don't mind, I'd appreciate it if you keep this part of my identity to yourselves. Ava balked. What? We can't tell anyone? Yeah, please don't say anything, especially at school. The girls got quiet, but Hannah nodded in agreement. I released the breath I'd been holding, but I still didn't feel better. Hannah was now pouting, her pretty pink lips pursed and her shoulders slouched in defeat. Seeing her like that made me feel like the Grinch. I'd literally taken away her joy. I had to do something, especially with Liam's hairy eyeball of doom staring me down across the table, so I opened my mouth again. I bet I could get Taylor Swift to visit Edenvale, not like this week, but maybe the next time she comes to the Bay Area, and maybe passes to the premiere of that new rom-com coming out soon. Would you guys be interested in going to that? Hannah and Ava both leapt off their chairs and started screaming and hugging each other. The next thing I knew, Hannah had thrown her arms around my neck and was squeezing me tight. Her hair brushed my face as her warm breath tickled my ear. It was the best feeling in the world. Until I remembered that everything I just promised was a complete lie. Chapter 18. Hannah. It's crazy how everything can change almost overnight. I woke up Monday morning to 4 new texts from Bradley. 4. Hey Hannah, what's up? Been thinking about you. Text me back, hey? XOXOB. 4 short texts, but they got the point across. Bradley had obviously heard from his mom and Shelby that they bumped into me at the mall. He had heard about Seth, too. How was I so sure? His Instagram said it all. He deleted the post of him in Brooklyn, the one where she kissed his cheek. And there was a new photo up, one of him and me at last year's dance with #Bay. Before anyone else. Could it be? Was Bradley done with Brooklyn and coming back to me? It seemed too easy. But I knew Bradley. He was the oldest of 4 kids and was used to being number 1. As long as I'd known him, he'd always been uber competitive. Straight A's, shelves full of sports trophies, the most friends at school. He wanted it all. That included anything he didn't have. In this case, it was me. My plan to make Bradley jealous was working, and the dance was still 5 days away. My heart raced, pumping adrenaline into my hands and feet. I couldn't stay still anymore, so I put my phone down and jumped out of my bed. I opened the blinds and stood in the warm sunshine, digging my toes into the worn carpet. It was times like this when I missed my old room. I grew up in our old house. My parents bought it soon after they got married, so this place felt foreign. Even with the posters that I put up to cover the peeling paint on the walls and the framed photos I had on my dresser, it still didn't feel the same. Even worse, it was a daily reminder that my whole life had changed. But knowing I had the power to get a part of it back, if I wanted to, made me feel a little better. The question was whether I still wanted that part of my old life back. I got dressed in a pair of skinny jeans and a blue tank top before throwing on a cropped sweater for the cool morning. Thank goodness I'd gotten up before Liam, so I had first dibs on the bathroom. That was the other thing I missed about our old house, having almost as many bathrooms as there were people. These days, I was lucky if there was enough hot water left for me to take a shower. While I brushed my hair and put on some mascara and lip gloss, I hummed softly under my breath. I would have much preferred to belt out one of Tay-Tay's hits, but the last time I tried that, I'd woken Liam up. On accident, I swear. He paid me back by waking up extra early the next day. Then he'd hogged the bathroom and left me with barely 2 minutes to get ready. That was the day my messy hair don't care shirt really came in handy. Today, though, was not that kind of day. I had plans to look my best. It was time to give Bradley a taste of his own medicine. When I finished getting ready, I found Mom in the kitchen making breakfast. She stood in front of the stove wearing a red apron over her cream-colored blouse and khakis. The sweet smell of syrup lingering in the air led me to the table where I saw a stack of pancakes sitting on a large plate. Tears sprang to my eyes to see actual homemade food, not frozen stuff, waiting for me. I wrapped my arms around Mom's waist, hugging her from behind. We were the same height, so I had no problem resting my chin on her shoulder. Thank you, Mom. It smells amazing. Mom laughed and patted my arm. She turned to smile at me. Even though she had gotten a few more lines around her eyes recently, she still looked young, especially without any dark circles under her eyes today. Good morning to you too, hun. Go on, eat before breakfast gets cold. I grabbed a plate and helped myself, remembering to save Liam some food. He could be so salty sometimes, but he had been really nice to me and Ava this past weekend. Plus, he hadn't even made a big deal about me hanging out with Seth, which was both strange and cool. Maybe it was a sign he was easing off on his overprotective tendencies. After Mom finished cooking scrambled eggs, she gave me some, then sat down to eat. It had been so long since the last time we'd shared a meal together, 9 days to be exact, that I just wanted to soak in the moment. I found myself staring at Mom when I should have been chewing my food. What's wrong? Do I have egg on my face? Mom wiped her mouth with a napkin. She gave me a curious smile, tilting her head to the side like she usually did when she listened. Nothing's wrong. It's just really good to see you. I feel like we haven't sat down like this in a long time. She nodded, her expression sobering. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. I wish I could be home more. It's okay, Mom, really. I didn't mean to make Mom sad. She was trying so hard already. She didn't need any more guilt. And with that little time we had together this morning, I didn't want to spend it feeling bad, so I decided to change the topic, especially since I needed her advice. So, you'll never guess who texted me. Is it the new boy you met at school? The nice one Grammy told me about? No, not Seth, although I wouldn't have minded if he had. I hadn't heard from Seth since our fake date Saturday. Not that we had anything specific to talk about, but we'd been sending each other cute animal gifts before the mall trip, and it was his turn next. I wondered if he was maybe feeling weird because of our run-in with Mrs. Price and Shelby, which reminded me I had yet to catch Mom up on all the drama. I paused for dramatic effect, then announced, "It was Bradley." Bradley? Mom quirked an eyebrow. What's going on with him? It's a long story, but basically, I updated Mom on the mall trip, careful to leave out the part about Seth and me practicing our PDA. I did fill her in on how I'd bumped into Bradley's mom and sister, and also about how Seth had come to my rescue. By the time I finished talking, Mom looked concerned. "I'm so sorry Mrs. Price gave you a hard time." I shrugged. "It's okay, but do you think I should text Bradley back?" "It's up to you, hon, but let me ask you this. What do you expect from him if you do?" I smirked. Mom had this funny way of answering a question with a question. Her method usually worked though, so I thought about my expectations while I cut into my chocolate chip pancake. "I'm not sure. I'd like him to admit that he lied to me about his mom making him take Brooklyn to the dance." Mom nodded. "Do you still want him to take you?" Did I? A week ago I would have said yes, but that was before I met Seth. He was so much more interesting than I thought. Being around him made me realize how shallow and fake my relationship with Bradley had been, which was a funny thought considering how Seth and I were the ones pretending to date. I met Mom's eyes and shook my head. "I think I like someone else." "It's this boy Seth, isn't it?" Mom grinned. "Grammy said your eyes light up when you talk about him. What's he like?" "He's sweet and kind and so generous. He's really different, not like Bradley at all. Seth's more quiet and shy, and he acts like he wants to hide from the world, but when he talks about dance, he can go on and on. It's really cute." I found myself smiling just thinking about Seth. How could I listen to his voice all day and not get bored? And how warm and safe I'd felt with his arm around me. A fluttering sensation immediately filled my stomach. Good gravy, I hadn't even known him for a week yet, and I was crushing hard. "He sounds like a nice boy." Mom patted my hand. "Has your brother met him yet?" Liam happened to walk in at that moment wearing a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. He yawned as he ran a hand through his dark hair. "Morning. Who have I met yet?" "Hannah's new friend, Seth." He plopped himself down at the table across from us and began loading his plate with food. "You mean Mr. A-lister?" I didn't like Liam's know-it-all tone. What does that mean? The guy's related to Hollywood royalty. He must have gotten special treatment getting into Edenvale. I balked. That was exactly what Seth had talked about. Why he wanted to keep his ties to his uncle and aunt a secret. No, he didn't. He had to apply like everyone else. Liam shoveled a big bite of eggs into his mouth, then washed it down with some juice. "If you say so, but that doesn't mean he's like one of us." He narrowed his eyes at me and repeated himself. "He's not one of us, Hannah." I chewed on my breakfast and on Liam's words at the same time. What was he implying? That Seth was better than the rest of us? That he wouldn't want to associate with kids like us? Was that why he wasn't texting me back? My chest tightened. The last thought made it hard for me to swallow. What if I wasn't good enough for Seth Spark? Chapter 19. Seth. I hated pretending to be someone I wasn't. That's why I hadn't texted Hannah back since I saw her at the mall. It was easier to not talk to her so I wouldn't end up making things up again. It wasn't like I was outright lying to Hannah about my identity. Since she knew about my ties to my famous relatives, she actually knew me better than anyone else at Edenvale did. But I felt the pressure to live up to the reputation that came with having the name Spark even more now. Being a Spark meant you were supposed to be cool. You didn't have to be rich and famous, but you had to stand out. All of my uncles had their own thing that made them special. Even my uncles whose faces weren't easily recognizable had their unique strengths. Uncle Colin was the very definition of life of the party with his humor. He was also married to Aunt Candy, who guest hosted on the Food Network as a food critic. Then there was Uncle Darren, who was practically a real-life superhero. He worked as a firefighter and saved lives on a daily basis. How much cooler could you get than that? Then there was me. The only thing I was good at was dancing, and even today, I was doing a horrible job at it. Ow! Hannah cried out as I stepped on her foot again for the second time. She looked up at me, her cute button nose all scrunched up. She then glanced down at the black vinyl floor of the school's dance studio where her feet, hers in a pair of wedge sandals, mine in my sneakers, faced each other. She glanced back up with an uneasy smile. I thought I was supposed to step forward and you were going to step back? I rolled my eyes, feeling like a total dweeb. You're right, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. My feet have a mind of their own today. It's okay. Sometimes my voice doesn't like to cooperate either. She dropped her hands from where they'd been, her right one on my shoulder, and her left one holding mine. The absence of her touch left me feeling colder than the air conditioning blowing through the vent above us. Hey, hey, hey! Ava called out from the other side of the room, where she sat in the corner. With her back against the wall-to-wall mirror, she'd been picking out songs for us to dance to. No slacking off, guys. Keep going. I suppressed a groan at her commanding tone. We'd all finished lunch quickly today so we could practice ballroom dancing. It was a good thing I'd taken some classes a few years ago. So far, though, 10 minutes in, Hannah and I were doing the opposite of dancing. She was doing fine. I was the one who kept tripping over my own feet. I couldn't even do a simple box step. I didn't know how to explain it, except that my heart wasn't in it, especially after Ava had chosen a Taylor Swift song. As soon as I heard the strumming of a guitar coming from the phone, the wires between my feet and my brain short-circuited. I got way caught up worrying about the empty promises I made to Hannah and Ava at the mall. I kept wondering when the girls would ask me about their favorite singer visiting Edenvale. How was I supposed to tell them the chances of that happening were about as good as me growing a full beard by winter? Hannah stepped close to me again and rested her hand on my shoulder. The warmth of her fingers through the cotton fabric of my shirt sent my pulse racing. I kept reminding myself she was only touching me because we had a job to do. Plus, Ava was watching us like a hawk. Hannah gave me a small smile as she placed her other hand in mine. Maybe you're more used to dancing by yourself? I shrugged and began moving in time with the music. I stared down at my feet, channeling all my energy into directing them in the right direction at the right time. It was like learning the basics all over again. I did some couples dancing when I was 12. My partner and I got third place in the Bay Area Junior Ballroom competition, but I didn't really enjoy it, so I quit after that. Wow, you came in third? Then it must be me messing you up. I quickly met her gaze. No, it's not you. I just have a lot on my mind. Like what? I couldn't tell Hannah the real reason I was so distracted, so I told her about the other things that had been on my mind. Like what to talk to my dad, my birth dad, about when I see him on Saturday, and my English presentation next week. I hate public speaking, so I'm so not looking forward to that. That is a lot to think about. The understanding in her eyes made my insecurities melt away, for a little while at least. I don't have any advice about your dad, but maybe for your presentation you could be creative and turn it into an interpretive dance. For a moment I couldn't tell if she was joking or not. Then I saw the twinkle in her eyes and burst out laughing. I totally thought you were serious. Only half serious. This is a performing arts school, so it's not that crazy of an idea. Good point. I returned her smile. I'd have to get my partner Nolan on board, though. The song transitioned to a slower ballad by a singer I didn't recognize, but we had no problem moving to the new rhythm. I even took the opportunity to lead Hannah into an underarm turn. After letting go of her left hand, I raised my left hand above her head and spun her around slowly. In those few seconds, I felt like the coolest guy in the world. Hannah's eyes widened with delight. We're really dancing. We're doing so much better. You mean I'm doing better, I joked. And so are your feet now that I've stopped stepping on them. She laughed. You said it, not me. Our eyes locked and we slowed our steps until we were standing still. It felt like one of those moments I'd read about in my dad's books, when the whole world faded away, and the only thing you saw was the girl in front of you. I saw Hannah. and she never looked more beautiful. Her cheeks were the prettiest shade of pink. My gaze dropped to her lips as she ran her tongue over them. I had a sudden, overwhelming desire to kiss Hannah, to take her in my arms and dip her head back so I could place my mouth on hers. It would have been an awesome idea, but under the circumstances, I'd be crossing so many lines. Friends didn't kiss, not even friends who were pretending to date. All the warning lights went off in my head, and I swallowed hard, fighting the urge. Several emotions crossed Hannah's face as we stood there with only a few inches between us. I think I saw surprise, followed by uncertainty. I was so caught up wondering what was on her mind, I didn't realize Ava had been calling for our attention until she was standing right beside us. "Han, your phone's blowing up. You should probably check it." She waved Hannah's pink striped backpack in the air. "Oh, thanks." Hannah seemed as surprised as I was to have been interrupted. She took the backpack from Ava, got her phone out from the front pocket, and swiped it open. "Seriously? I can't believe it." "What is it? Is everything okay?" Ava and I blurted out our questions at the same time. Hannah looked up from her screen, shock written all over her face. "It's Bradley. He wants to take me to the dance." My mouth went dry. Did this mean our fake relationship was over? Chapter 20. Hannah. I was almost positive Seth had wanted to kiss me. The way his gaze had moved from my eyes to my mouth and back again gave me a small glimmer of hope that maybe he felt the same way about me that I felt about him. But the moment had come and gone so fast before I could even react. Then Ava had interrupted us to tell me about Bradley's text, and there was no chance of going back. And now Seth was encouraging me to go to the dance with Bradley. "You should go." His expression was hard to read, but his voice was calm, almost insistent. "That's what you wanted, right?" I'd obviously read Seth all wrong a few minutes ago. He was talking like he didn't care about us and the amazing chemistry we just shared. Or at least what I thought we shared. There had been sparks when we held hands and butterflies in my stomach. All the warm, fuzzy stuff that romance books and chick flicks make you believe happen when you're around the boy you like. I'd experienced them with Seth, but he was acting like none of that mattered. I guess it didn't matter to him. We'd always been pretending, and the reality was that while we had some things in common, we were from two very different worlds. "What did he say exactly, Han?" Aves was peering over my shoulder at my phone. "Did he say his mom's okay with him taking you now? Did he dump the other girl? More deets, please." Sighing, I handed my phone to her. A week ago, I would have been jumping up and down and squealing in victory. Nothing would have made me happier than winning Bradley back, especially from my nemesis. Now, though, I just wanted to crawl into bed, pull the covers over my head, and listen to Adele remind me that Seth and I could have had it all. Ava read the messages, then returned my phone. She flipped her dark brown hair over her shoulder as she studied me. "It sounds like he's sorry. Not sorry enough to admit he lied to you, but sorry enough to send you a broken heart emoji." "A broken heart emoji?" Seth repeated with a wry smile. "That sounds serious." I couldn't help but scoff. Bradley never used emojis. He always said he was too cool for them, so maybe this was his grand gesture of apologizing. I guess it is for him. It still doesn't make up for the fact that he lied to me. Seth nodded. "Yeah, that wasn't cool." "Cool or not, you've got him begging for you to go with him." Ava crossed her arms over her blue sweater and narrowed her eyes. "This is actually perfect, Han. You should go to the dance with Bradley, show up looking all hot, then dump his sorry behind in front of everyone there." I had to smile at Ava's enthusiasm. She really did have my back. "That would be epic, wouldn't it?" "So epic." Ava beamed, seeming pleased with herself. She glanced up at Seth and gave him a pat on the back. "You really came through, Seth, and you didn't even have to go to the dance to do it." "Yeah, I guess so." He gave Ava a small smile. "Thanks for all your help." "No prob." Ava made the motion of dusting her hands off. "My job here is done. If you guys don't mind, I need to drop something off at my locker before class. I'll see you guys in math." "Thanks, Aves," I called after her as she picked up her belongings and left the studio. When the door closed, I took a deep breath and faced Seth. We looked at each other, our hands in our pockets, like we were waiting for the other person to speak first. At least, that's what I was doing. I had no idea what this change in plans meant for us, but I didn't want to assume anything. Would Seth still want to hang out with me, or did he have better things to do now? So, his voice filled the silence, then trailed off. We probably should have named the plan How to Fool a Guy in 5 Days, huh? Yeah, I guess we were pretty convincing that day at the mall. Pretending to be a couple and all. It wasn't hard to do. Any guy would be lucky to have you for a girlfriend. He gave me the sweetest smile that made me believe he meant every word. You're so easy to talk to. Thanks, you are too. You're a great listener. He blushed and ducked his head. Thanks. Just so you know, I wasn't pretending to pay attention to you. I did care about what you said. As your friend, I mean. Hearing Seth say he cared meant a lot to me. I was so lucky to have his friendship. I know you did. It was the same for me. I appreciate everything you've done. You really went out of your way to help me. It wasn't a big deal. I squeezed out a smile, even though those 5 words felt like a punch in the gut. I knew Seth didn't mean it the way I took it, but there was so much truth in his statement. The past 5 days seemed like a blip on the radar, almost like they hadn't happened. But they had. I swallowed back the lump growing in my throat. Why did this feel like a breakup when Seth and I hadn't even been together? So, what now? Seth scratched the back of his neck and waited for me to reply. I guess you're off the hook. There's no need to practice anymore. Oh, right. No need to pretend anymore. He looked around the spacious dance floor. It was fun dancing, though. I kind of miss having a partner. It was super fun. I never thought I'd be able to do the waltz. You're a really good teacher. It was my pleasure. I'd be happy to show you some more moves or even help you practice more for this Saturday. Yeah, I love that. I feel like we were just getting good at it. That turn you had me do was so fun. His face brightened. He held out his hand and smiled. Want to try it again? Sure. I stepped forward and resumed my stance, putting my left hand on his shoulder and my right hand in his left. The gap between us closed and I was near enough to smell the fresh fragrance of soap, mixed with a scent that was distinctly Seth. It was hard to put into words, but it gave me the same sensation as listening to a soothing piano intro. My lips immediately curved into a smile and my body felt lighter. There was no doubt about it. Being with Seth put my heart and mind at ease. He began counting 1, 2, 3 under his breath as he led me, our feet moving in unison to a rhythm that was all our own. It surprised me that we didn't even need music to dance. He turned me around, making my body spin as much as my head. The tender smile he gave me when I faced him again stole my breath away. He wasn't dancing with me because he had to. He was dancing with me because he wanted to. I could have stayed like that forever. Just Seth and me dancing in perfect harmony. But as all good moments go, ours ended way too soon. The bell rang, signaling the start of the 3-minute passing period before our next class. I sighed and reluctantly stopped dancing. We should go. He nodded, his expression growing thoughtful. He gave me a slow once-over, almost as if he were memorizing every part of me. His voice was gruff when he finally spoke. I really hope things work out for you this Saturday. Bradley's a lucky guy. He quickly added as he stepped back, I'll see you around, Hannah. And with those words, Seth grabbed his belongings off the dance floor and left, taking my heart with him. Chapter 21. Seth. Earth to Seth. Mayday, mayday, come in, Mr. Spark. I jerked my head up to see Nolan waving his hands in front of my face. He sat backwards in his chair on the other side of my desk. Blinking a few times brought his shaggy brown hair and goofy smile into clear view. I rubbed my eyes, not believing I had fallen asleep in English. That's what I got for staying up till 2:30 in the morning. But how could I sleep when I couldn't get Hannah off my mind? I ran my hands through my hair and looked around the room. Our classmates were all paired off as they worked on their presentations. Nolan and I were supposed to be doing the same. Instead, I left him to do the work while I snoozed. I gave him an apologetic smile. Sorry, I'm not trying to be a slacker. Where were we? Romeo and Juliet, Page 54. He flipped his open book over onto his desk, then raised one brow at me. So, what have you been doing instead of sleeping at night? Do tell. I sighed. Nolan was rubbing his hands together like he was expecting me to spill some juicy information. The only juice I had in my life at the moment was the OJ I'd had for breakfast. I suppose the lemons life had thrown my way counted too. Nothing much. I've just had a lot on my mind. Girl trouble, I'm guessing? I haven't seen you eat lunch with Hannah at all this week. Yeah, no, I haven't been. It was Thursday today, which meant I'd gone 3 days without talking to Hannah. 3 days without hearing her laugh, and 3 days without having her by my side as we walked from class to class. It had been the 3 longest days of my life. Okay, maybe I was exaggerating, but there was no denying how much I missed her. She doesn't need me to be her fake boyfriend anymore, so there's no reason for us to hang out. Ouch! Nolan winced. He pushed up the sleeves of his black hoodie, then leaned forward to rest his arms on his chair back. That's it? You're just gonna give up like that? I scoffed. Who did Nolan think I was, Romeo? What else can I do? She only hung out with me because she needed me to do something for her. I helped her get her ex back, so my job is done. But she picked you out of all the guys at Edenvale. There must be a reason why she chose you. It was random, I shrugged, determined to not get my hopes up. As much as I wanted to believe that there was a special reason why Hannah had chosen me, the fact of the matter now was that she was choosing Bradley. Perfect, popular Bradley, who didn't deserve her. Can't you guys at least still be friends? Friends? Nolan's question made me swallow hard. No way. Friendship with Hannah wasn't an option. Not when I'd had a taste of what it was like to be more than friends. It would be pure torture to stand by while she dated another guy. The very thought of Hannah dancing with Bradley left a bitter taste in my mouth. It was time to change the subject. Can we get back to the book? We need to figure out our presentation. I spent the rest of class feeling sorry for Romeo and Juliet, and for myself. I totally understood what it was like to fall for someone you couldn't have, when all the outside forces seemed to be working against you. I felt like a fool to believe that there could have been something between me and Hannah. I'd never be in the same league as her. I needed to accept my fate and move on. That's what I tried to convince myself of as I walked to geometry. Nolan had gone off first to meet up with his friend Mimi. I was alone again, something that was becoming an all too familiar occurrence. I'd grown up as an only child for a decade, so I was used to being by myself. But I was starting to hate it, especially when a lot of the kids around me seemed to be pairing off. Everywhere I looked, by the lockers and in the courtyard, there were couples, guys and girls holding hands, staring into each other's eyes, and, I shivered, kissing. I quickly averted my eyes. There was only so much I could take. With my hands stuffed into my khaki shorts, I kept my head down as I walked. I was nearing the main building when a pair of large sneakers stepped in front of me. I stopped in my tracks and looked up. The blue eyes that met mine made me gulp. Liam, hey, how's it going? Liam cocked his head and held my gaze. He was dressed in a polo about the same shade of green as mine, but the fabric of his shirt was pulled taut across his broad chest and shoulders. I thought we had an agreement, Spark. Agreement? The one where you said you'd keep an eye on my sister for me? I haven't seen you walk her to class or eat with her all this week. Oh, that. Well, the thing is, I drew out each word like it was a piece of taffy being stretched and pulled until it broke apart. I was trying hard to come up with a good explanation that would satisfy Liam and keep him from stretching and pulling me apart. Hannah's really smart and capable, and she can totally watch out for herself. She's also got Ava, who's with her practically all the time. She's tough, believe me. So with the two of them together, Hannah doesn't need me around. His expression softened a little. Ava's not as tough as she looks, but that's beside the point. He set his jaw again. It's not that I don't trust Hannah. I don't trust the guys who try to get close to her, like Bradley. He's a grade A jerk if I've ever met one. He doesn't deserve to take Hannah to the dance, not when he's never appreciated her, and especially not after he backed out once already. I nodded, fully agreeing with Liam. He doesn't care about her. Not the way I do, I wanted to add. But she likes the guy, so what can you do? Liam flashed me a look, hairy eyeball and all. That told me he knew exactly what needed to be done. Protect her, of course. Of course. He sighed deeply. Look, Seth, I made a promise to our dad that I'd be the man of the house while he's gone, and I take that responsibility very seriously. I'll do anything it takes to make sure Hannah's safe. For the first time, I saw a crack in Liam's tough guy act. There's a flash of vulnerability in the way his lips turned down for a brief nanosecond before he pressed them back together in a straight line. He had looked sad, almost helpless. That desperation tugged at my heart so hard, I made up my mind to help him no matter what. You're a good brother, Liam. He blinked as if not quite sure what to make of my compliment. I don't always get it right, but I try. I know, so what do you think we can do to protect Hannah from Bradley? We? So you're back in? I nodded eagerly. Even if I couldn't be Hannah's boyfriend, fake or otherwise, I still cared about her, a lot, and I wanted the best for her. Of course, I'm in. All right, man. Liam patted me on the back and gave me an appreciative smile. Here's the plan. Chapter 22. Hannah. I didn't know what was going on with Liam and Seth, but seeing them talking together by the lockers earlier made me slightly jealous, which was totally weird because I had no say over who Seth could or couldn't talk to. But the simple truth was that I missed him talking to me. Even now, as we sat next to each other in math class, he was facing forward, his eyes focused like lasers on the whiteboard. Who knew points and planes could be so interesting? But there he was, totally absorbed in the lecture material Mr. Woodward was going on and on about. The only time he even looked at me was right when he sat down, and that was because he was too polite not to. Being the gentleman that he was, Seth still said hi and bye every day in class, but he otherwise left me alone. I hated that he had only been my friend because he had a job to do. That's the only explanation I could think of for why he was ignoring me. He stopped walking me to my classes and had been spending lunchtime by himself in the dance studio every day. I knew because I'd spied on him, peeking through the small window in the door. I loved watching him dance when he thought no one was around. He moved with such grace and strength across the floor, like he was in total command of the space. He had no problems expressing himself with his body. I wish he was as open with his words. I gritted my teeth, anxious for class to end. Once the bell rang, I was going to be out the door and making my way through a long to-do list for Saturday's dance. I'd finally texted Bradley back and agreed to go with him, with the intention of officially ending our relationship there. I'd hoped that would mean Seth and I could start something real afterwards, a hope that now seemed stupid when he wouldn't even look at me. It was torturous how I had to suffer through another 10 minutes of class, pretending not to stare at Seth's profile. His insanely adorable profile. I loved how his hair fell over his forehead when he looked down at his textbook, and how it covered the line that appeared between his brows when he was thinking hard. I even loved the slope of his straight nose, and the way his lips curved when he chewed on the edge of his thumbnail. Bzzz. My phone in the pocket of my cardigan buzzed. I snuck it out, doing my best to keep it hidden under my desk. Edenvale had a no-phones policy on campus except for lunchtime, and this was especially true for Mr. Woodward's class. I'd heard that he had gotten a reputation last year for confiscating phones, but so far no one had gotten into trouble this year for taking a quick peek at a text. There was a new message from Eva, who was sitting 2 feet away from me on my right. I glanced over at her, surprised to see her brows raised. What was so important that she couldn't wait until after class to tell me? I swiped the screen and read, "You're practically drooling, Han. If you're trying to stare at Seth in secret, you need to do a better job at it." Good gravy, how embarrassing! My cheeks burned as I snuck a look to my left. I breathed a sigh of relief to see Seth slouched in his chair, eyes still fixed on the board. At least he hadn't caught me staring. I quickly replied to Ava, "Thanks, I can't help it. He's just so cute." Ava sent me back a smiley face with a tongue sticking out. He's still got the spark genes, even if he's not blood-related. I guess being adopted into their family is enough for the cuteness to rub off. I couldn't help but smile. Even though Seth and I weren't talking anymore, I still felt a connection to him. He had shared a part of himself with me that no one else knew about. Okay, so Ava and Liam knew about his spark identity too, but they didn't count. He had revealed it first in front of me and to help me. That made me feel extra special. It had to be a big deal for him to trust me with the secret. I hope it counted for something. What I didn't count on was Mr. Woodward calling on me. My head jerked up at the sound of my name. Miss Mitchell, are you on your phone? He looked over at me, his bifocals falling down the bridge of his crooked nose. His bald head shone under the fluorescent lights, calling for my attention. Miss Mitchell? No, not anymore, sir. I shrank down in my seat as the whole class shifted their attention to me. Sorry, I was just checking a text. I'll put it away now. Sighing loudly, Mr. Woodward shook his head. You know the school policy. This is a place of education, not entertainment. Nolan raised his hand. But isn't this a performing arts school? Mr. Woodward smirked. You know what I mean. He strode quickly across the room toward me, appearing like a moving mosaic with his colorful bomber jacket. For a middle-aged man, he was actually pretty hip. He seemed like a cool teacher, but even cool teachers followed rules. When he reached my desk, he held out his hand. May I see what was so urgent that you couldn't wait until after class to reply? My jaw dropped. He couldn't be serious. Wasn't that an invasion of privacy? That won't be necessary. It really wasn't anything important. I'll be the judge of that, Miss Mitchell. My heart pounded under Mr. Woodward's intense gaze. The thought crossed my mind to lock the screen, but I didn't want to upset him even more. Seeing no way out of the situation, I handed over my phone. Chairs scraped along the floor as everyone turned in their seats to look my way. I chewed on my lower lip as my insides twisted into knots. Mr. Woodward squinted at the screen for a long moment. Then he did the unthinkable. He started reading my text exchange with Ava, out loud, to the entire class. I just about died. Beads of sweat broke out on my forehead. I could barely get oxygen into my lungs. Seth seemed equally embarrassed. His face turned tomato red at the part about me drooling over him. That's when all the girls in our class giggled and some of the guys snickered. When I didn't think things could get any worse, they did. Mr. Woodward read, He's still got the Spark genes, even if he's not blood related. I guess being adopted into their family is enough for the cuteness to rub off. My heart sank. A resounding gasp echoed in the room. Nolan immediately turned around in his seat to face Seth. Wait a minute. You said you didn't know Evan and Emma Spark. Did you lie about that? Seth held up his hands, his expression pained. I didn't want to, Nolan, but yeah, I did. Evan and Emma are my uncle and aunt. The whole class started glaring at Seth. It was crazy how fast the mood shifted. 1 minute they were laughing at me. The next, they were stunned silent. Just as quickly, everyone began whispering. I only hoped they were as excited as Ava and I had been when we found out about Seth's secret. The last thing I wanted was for Seth to face judgment. That was the worst kind of attention. My eyes filled with hot tears when his face turned ashen. Poor sweet Seth. I was used to seeing him blush, not deathly pale. He looked so sick, I was sure he was going to pass out. Class, that's enough. Mr. Woodward set my phone on my desk and returned to the front of the room. You are here to learn, not gossip. There will be no more talk of this matter now. The bell rang, cutting off his words. Everyone seemed to forget about Seth as they gathered up their stuff. The sounds of voices and footsteps bounced off the walls as people hurried to leave. Nolan was one of the first to go. He didn't even look back when Seth called out to him. I wanted desperately to talk to Seth and tell him how sorry I was for leaking his secret, but he wouldn't even look at me. He was already on his feet with his backpack hitched over one shoulder. 2 seconds later, he was gone. I shoved my book, notebook, and pencil into my backpack, then stood up so quickly I knocked my chair over. Before I could pick it up, Ava shooed me off. I'll get it. You go get Seth. Thanks. I hope it's not too late. I flashed her a grateful smile and ran out the door. Chapter 23. Seth. I'd never moved so fast in my life. It was like my feet were doing the jive, dancing to the rapid beating of my heart as I headed straight for the car pickup line. As soon as I got to the sidewalk, I scanned the parking lot for Dad's van. My stomach dropped when there was no sign of his silver Honda Odyssey. Great. Dad had probably lost track of time writing his latest book, something he did every now and then, but of all the days to be late, it had to be today. On one of the worst days of my life. It was only a matter of time before the whole school found out I was related to Uncle Evan and Aunt Emma. Even now I sensed kids whispering and staring at me while they left campus. Maybe I was being paranoid, but it was hard not to be after seeing everyone's reaction in math class. I wondered what people thought of me. Would I have to change schools again? Seth! My heart caught in my throat at the sound of Hannah's voice. I turned and spotted her running toward me, her red hair flowing around her shoulders. Any other moment I would have been excited, ecstatic, and elated, plus all the other synonyms I could think of to be the focus of her attention, especially after what she said in her text. But right now, she was the last person I wanted to talk to. I was beyond mortified. She'd just seen me at my worst, helpless and humiliated, and I feared what she might think of me now. When Hannah reached me, I could hardly look her in the eyes. Those baby blues that used to warm my body with one glance now made me want to disappear. Hey, Hannah, I can't talk right now. My dad's gonna be here any minute. Seth, please, hear me out. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to leak your secret. I had no idea Mr. Woodward was going to read those texts out loud to the class. I shook my head, not really paying attention to what Hannah was saying. My mind was consumed with a need to escape. I scanned the vehicles pulling up to the curb and finally spotted my dad's 3 cars down the line. Sorry, I gotta go. I ran off without a look back, only stopping when I got into the passenger seat of the van and shut the door. You okay, bud? Dad glanced over at me, his brows furrowed. You look like you're coming down with something. Just go, Dad, please. I ducked down in my seat, shielding my face with my hand. The sooner we got out of there, the sooner I'd be able to wallow by myself in my room, where I was planning to stay for a very, very long time, possibly forever. The fact of the matter, though, was that Mom and Dad only let my pity party go on until dinner. When the sunlight shining through my blinds started fading, Dad knocked on my door. I knew it was Dad because his knocks were gentle compared to Mom's, and hesitant. Dad probably didn't know what to say to me, but I had to give him credit for wanting to try. Knowing I couldn't avoid him forever, I called out, "Come in." Dad quietly walked in and sat on the edge of my bed, where I'd been lying for the past few hours in my sweats. He patted my leg and gave me a small smile. Want to talk about it? I shrugged. I really didn't want to relive what had happened, but I knew the sooner I got stuff off my chest, the better I'd feel. The kids in my math class found out I'm a spark. I'm sure they think I got into Edenvale based on my connections, not my talent. And they were all staring at me and talking about me. It was awful. Dad nodded, looking thoughtful. That's rough, but I'm glad it wasn't worse. I shot up in bed. Worse? How much worse did Dad think you could get? You don't get it, Dad. It was humiliating. He held up his hands. I didn't mean it wasn't bad, but after what you went through at your old school. His voice trailed off as he rubbed a hand over his face. That was awful. I swallowed hard, thinking about what my parents must have gone through last year when I got bullied. The older I got, the more I realized they were human too, with fears and regrets of their own. I didn't want to add to Dad's worries. No, you're right. What happened today wasn't nearly as bad. It's just that Hannah was there, and she saw it all go down. She's actually the one who leaked it. Huh? I'm not following. I filled Dad in on what had happened, starting from when Mr. Woodward took Hannah's phone away. His eyes grew wide with anticipation, but when I relayed the text that Hannah and Ava had exchanged, he started grinning. His blue eyes sparkled as he exclaimed, "Hannah thinks you're cute!" I fell back onto my pillow with a sigh. Dad, that's beside the point. He shook his head adamantly. Seth Spark. That is the only point worth getting hung up about right now. Who cares what the other kids think? You got into Edenvale, fair and square. You met all 3 of their criteria, a 3.3 GPA, a background in the performing arts, and a past hardship in your personal or family life. What matters now is that the girl you like likes you back. I rolled my eyes. No wonder Dad wrote romance. The guy loved love. He was so excited about the possibility of Hannah liking me, he didn't seem to care about my reputation going down the drain. Okay, so I had been even more excited than Dad about Hannah possibly liking me. I thought we had shared a moment when we danced on Monday, but as soon as the bell rang and the moment ended, I remembered what I was up against. Or rather, who. I met Dad's hopeful gaze with a frown. Hannah has a boyfriend. She's going to the dance with him on Saturday, not me. Even if she did maybe like me a little, I can't compare to someone like Bradley, especially after today. No one's going to want to hang out with me anymore. No one? I'm sure that's not true. My thoughts went to Nolan and how disappointed he looked when he realized I'd lied to him. Besides Hannah and Ava, he was my only other friend at Edenvale. I'm serious, Dad. It's not looking good. Can I change schools or be homeschooled? Dad chuckled. As much as I love you, son, it's a firm no. It doesn't do us any good to run away from our problems. I know things seem bad now, but that means they can only get better. I stared up at the ceiling, focused on the dozen glow-in-the-dark stars Dad had stuck there when we first moved in. Back then, the house had seemed so big, bigger than any place Mom and I had ever lived in. Seeing the stars lit up at night had made me feel safe. If only there was as easy of a fix for my fears now. As your Uncle Colin would say, Dad continued with his pep talk, we Spark men are tough. You went through so much last year, Seth. That made you stronger. I have faith you'll figure this out. Dad patted my leg again, prompting me to meet his gaze. Thanks. I know it's not that bad. I just wish I could be known for me, you know? Not for what my family did or does, good or bad. Not that I'm not grateful to be a Spark. I totally am, I quickly added. I never wanted Dad to feel like I didn't appreciate him. I get it, Seth. I don't like the spotlight either. But hey, look on the bright side. You got Hannah's attention. That's pretty dope. I cringed. No, Dad, please don't say dope. Okay, fine. I meant cool. It's pretty cool. Bzz. Dad picked up my phone from the floor where I dropped it earlier. His brows rose when he looked at the screen. Speaking of... I took the phone from him and noticed an incoming call from Hannah. Was I ready to talk to her? Chapter 24. Hannah. Seth wouldn't pick up my calls or answer my messages. I've been trying to reach him since yesterday, but after 2 calls and 5 texts, I decided to stop. I didn't think it would help my case if he started thinking I was a creeper, especially now that he had been elevated to royalty status. Yep, somehow my leaking Seth's ties to the Spark family had done the complete opposite of what he'd feared. In a matter of a day, his reputation flipped from the new guy to the it guy. People saw Seth as their direct connection to Hollywood. He was now Edenvale's GOAT, the greatest of all time. This change was amazing and frustrating all at the same time. I was happy for Seth, really, I was, but with him being so popular now, I felt like a total outsider. I literally couldn't even get close enough to see him, much less talk to him. Not that it mattered, since he obviously didn't want anything to do with me. He's like a celebrity. I munched on my sandwich as I ate lunch with Ava at our usual bench. I couldn't tear my eyes away from a group of kids, both guys and girls from every grade who had gathered around Seth where he sat on the other side of the courtyard. One of the untouchables. Sorry, Han. I can't believe he won't talk to you, even after you apologized. Ava sighed and gave me a side hug. The sleeve of her sweatshirt brushed against my arm, waking me from my stupor. I blinked back hot tears and shrugged. This is stupid. I've only known him a week and a half. I shouldn't be this upset. Well, love, or like, doesn't always make sense. But there'll be other guys, cuter guys, nicer guys, you'll see. Sure, there were other guys in the world, but none of them were Seth. I don't know, Aves. I've never met anyone like him. He gets me, and I get him. We shared a moment when we were dancing the other day. One of those time stood still moments. I never felt that way with Bradley, and I knew him for forever. There's just something really special about Seth. Ava gave me a sad smile. You really like him, don't you? I nodded, trying hard not to give in to the overwhelming urge I had to cry. It didn't make much sense. I should have been happy. Tomorrow, I'd be going to the dance with Bradley, a guy who wanted to spend time with me. Seth had helped me get what I wanted, Bradley's attention. Bradley had been acting really sweet the past few days, texting me like nothing had changed. Yet it felt like everything had changed, at least for me. When I got to math class, it was more evident than ever that my world had flipped upside down. Another girl in my seat. She was a dance major, a blonde with long, shapely legs, and a bright smile aimed straight at Seth. She, along with two of her friends, had surrounded Seth's chair on either side of him and in front of him. They were talking a mile a minute, no doubt asking him questions about his famous relatives. The worst part was how little shame they had, batting their fake eyelashes and touching Seth's arm every other second. It was seriously nauseating to watch. I ended up sitting in the second row with Ava, which was a blessing in disguise. Normally I'd be freezing in the back of the room where the AC was the strongest, but up in the front I was warm enough to take off my sweater. Plus, without the distraction of watching Seth, I actually paid attention to the lesson, and I had the shortest route to the door when the bell rang. After packing up my stuff and saying goodbye to Ava, who promised to help me get ready tomorrow, I headed straight for the hall. I was a girl on a mission to reach the parking lot as fast as possible. Putting some distance between me and Seth was the best way to get over him. I needed to train my heart not to remember him as my fake boyfriend, and especially not to hope for more. We were barely even friends now. You're not good enough for Seth. He's got plenty of other girls to choose from. He's never liked you in the first place. By the time I exited the main building, I had repeated those phrases to myself enough times that I almost believed them. I thought I was in the clear, until I heard a familiar rich tenor voice call out to me, "Hannah!" My footsteps slowed down, even though my brain told me it was a bad idea to stop, but stop I did. I also turned around, bracing myself for the moment my heart would betray me. Thump, thumpity, thump. My pulse soared as soon as I locked eyes with Seth. His intense sky-blue eyes. Still, I played it casual and didn't let on to how much his closeness affected me. "Hey, Seth. You left this on your chair." "Oh, thanks." In my rush to leave, I'd forgotten my sweater. I took it from him, careful not to brush his hand during the exchange, even though I really wanted to. Two other people around me didn't get the memo when I was trying to keep some distance between us. Someone walked into me from behind, making me stumble forward. "Sorry," a male voice apologized, but it was too late. Oof! I landed face first against Seth's firm chest. His familiar scent and the warmth of his arms around me knocked all sense out of my head. For a second, I let myself lean on him, resting my ear over his heart. I felt as much as I heard his heartbeat, the fast-paced rhythm matching my own. Every part of me wanted to stay in his embrace, but it wasn't meant to be. A group of female students suddenly surrounded us, calling out to Seth in their high-pitched, flirtatious voices. I pulled back with a sheepish smile. "Sorry about that." "No worries. Are you okay?" The concern on Seth's face tugged at my heart. "I'm fine. I lost my balance, that's all." He nodded. "Hannah, Seth, can you get us passes to a movie premiere? When's your Uncle Evan coming to visit? Can you get your Aunt Emma to sign my poster of her?" The voices piped up one after another as if they were part of some orchestrated choir. Pretty soon, the girls were squeezing past me to get closer to Seth. After a few seconds, they completely edged me out. Now that he had the undivided attention of so many pretty and talented girls, what did he need me for? With my head hanging, I hugged my sweater to my chest and walked away without a look back. Chapter 25. Seth. Hannah liked me. I was sure of it. The way she leaned into me yesterday proved it. Her body had relaxed against my chest for the briefest of moments, and the longing in her eyes when she looked at me had said it all. She was sorry. She missed me. She wished things could go back to normal again. Boy, did I wish for that last bit myself. I leaned back in my wooden chair at a coffee house in downtown San Jose on an overcast Saturday morning. The weather perfectly reflected my mood. Gray, somber, and dreary. Mom had dropped me off 10 minutes ago to meet Richard. He was officially 12 minutes late, which meant I'd already wasted too much time waiting for him to show up. Typical. As I debated whether to call Mom to come pick me up, another notification popped up on my phone screen. My phone had been blowing up since yesterday, when kids at school started tagging me in their social media posts. Apparently, I was now a popular kid at Edenvale. maybe even the most popular kid. Now that word had gotten around that I was a spark, people were treating me differently. Okay, it was mainly the female population who wanted to take pictures with me, but the guys at school had started noticing me more too. It seemed like everyone and their neighbor wanted to talk to me. The only problem was that they didn't care about me. They only wanted to know about my family. I wish I could go back to being invisible, or at least to a time when only a few people knew who I really was and wanted to associate with me for me, before things got messy and crowded and out of control. Despite all the complications, one thing was clear. Hannah liked me. That was all that mattered. I totally wanted to talk to her, but I'd been so nervous about meeting up with Richard. I could only focus on one thing at a time. Soon, though, my foot tapped out a rapid beat, channeling the nervous energy in my body. I wiped my damp hands along the front of my jeans and took a deep breath. It wasn't every day that a guy got to sit down with a man who'd abandoned him as a baby. I had no idea what I was supposed to say to Richard when he arrived, if he arrived. The sooner he did, though, the sooner I'd be able to get this meeting over with. I had plenty of things I needed to do before tonight's dance. I glanced up as the shop's door opened, my mouth suddenly dry. A tall, bald man walked in, his step slow and measured. Even though his jacket hung loosely from his body, he had a commanding presence about him. It had been over a decade since I'd seen Richard, but I recognized him instantly. Cancer treatments had thinned him out and given his complexion a yellowish tint, but he had the same angular jaw and prominent nose. When he made eye contact with me, his expression softened. As he walked over to my table in the back corner, I stood up to greet him. There was an odd formality to the situation that I didn't know how to handle. Here was the man I shared half of my DNA with, yet I knew nothing about him. Nothing good, at least. I had read plenty of things about him in the news, but that was before he had supposedly changed. I guess it was time to see if he'd really grown a heart. When he reached me, I stuck out my hand and gave him a small smile. His large hand enveloped mine before he pulled me in for a tight hug. I gave his bony back an awkward pat as I breathed in the unfamiliar scent of pine and spices from his cologne. "Seth, it's so good to see you." Richard pulled away, then took the seat across from me. He motioned for me to sit down. I apologize for being late. I don't move as fast as I used to. "It's okay. Would you like something to drink?" I remained standing, hoping to escape for a minute to place his order. Seeing Richard in person made me realize I wasn't ready to face him yet. I needed a moment to myself. "A decaf mocha, please." While I waited in line, I did some breathing exercises my old therapist had taught me for whenever I felt anxious. By the time I returned to the table and sat down, I felt a little more in control. "Thank you." Richard took a sip from his mug, then eyed me curiously. "You're not getting anything?" "I'm good. I can't do caffeine. It makes me jittery." He nodded in understanding. "It has the same effect on me, too, hence the decaf." This piece of information, as small as it was, caught me off guard. I'd always wondered why I couldn't handle caffeinated drinks when Mom had no problems with them. "I guess we have something in common." Richard smiled. "I heard you got my dancing skills, too." My head jerked up. "You dance?" "They didn't call me Rhythmic Rick back in the day for nothing," he laughed, the sound rich and full. "That's how I got your mom to go out with me. I swept her off her feet, literally." "I had no idea. Mom never mentioned that." "I'm sure there's a lot she didn't tell you about me, most of which I'm grateful for." He pressed his thin lips together. "There's a reason why I wanted to see you today, Seth. I don't mean to be a downer, but I need to get some stuff off my chest, if you don't mind." My own chest tightened, but I nodded for him to continue. I figured this meeting was more for him than for me. If he had anything to say to make himself feel better, I wasn't going to stop him. Anyway, listening to Richard was easier than having to talk about myself. "I messed up, Seth, in so many ways. Not only professionally, but personally. I chased after things that I thought would make me happy and successful. But I lost sight of the things, the people, that mattered the most." He released a shaky breath and looked me square in the eyes. "I have so many regrets. If I could go back and do it all again, I'd never give you or your mom up. I hope you know how sorry I am." I fiddled with the hem of my button-down shirt, folding and unfolding it. The repetitive action soothed me despite the emotions warring within me. I nodded, not knowing what else to do. These were words I desperately longed to hear back when I believed in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. Now, they just seemed like empty wishes. Still, they made a small dent in the armor I put up around my heart. When it came down to it, I was just a kid who wanted to know that his dad thought about him. Richard stared at me expectantly. During the moment of silence, he took a few sips of his coffee. When I still hadn't said a word, he set his mug down. "Tell me about yourself, Seth. What you like, what you don't like, what you want to do with your life, anything and everything. I'd like to get to know you better." I couldn't help but scoff. How was I supposed to condense 15 years of my life into a few minutes? "I'm not sure where to start. There's a lot you missed out on." I winced, surprised I had admitted this much. Richard remained calm, unfazed. "I have time." Maybe it was the vulnerable look in his hazel eyes, or the fact that I wasn't sure when I'd see him again. But something in me cracked, in a good way. My defenses came down, inch by inch. I began by telling Richard about the one thing that was easiest for me to talk about: dance. He nodded when appropriate, and asked questions to get me to open up. And after about an hour, he didn't feel as much of a stranger anymore. He didn't feel like a father figure either, but more of an older family friend. A friend I wouldn't mind keeping in touch with. At the end of our time together, Richard gave me another hug, and this time I hugged him back. "You're much more mature than I was at 15, Seth. I can see you're coming into your own. Don't ever lose who you are. With your heart and character, you'll go a long way." Richard may not have given me much during my life, but his parting words were the best gift I could receive today. Instead of feeling like a product of my DNA or my adoptive family, I left the cafe feeling like myself. The guy Hannah liked, and who liked her back. I hoped it wasn't too late to let her know. Chapter 26. Hannah. I was so nervous. I couldn't even breathe normally, and I'd had lots of vocal training to teach me how. My hands shook so much as I applied mascara in front of the bathroom vanity that I ended up drawing another set of eyelashes onto my eyelid. Gah! Calm down, it's just a dance. That's what I kept telling myself all afternoon while I painted my nails a pretty dark purple color, then curled and teased my hair. It'd taken me twice as long to get ready since Ava told me last minute that she wouldn't be able to come over to help. Something about having to watch her foster brothers. I missed having her around to talk some sense into me, which was why I was having to do it myself. Too bad pep talks weren't as helpful when they came from my own mouth. The alarm on my phone dinged to remind me there was only half an hour left before I had to leave. And an hour left before I'd be seeing Bradley and the rest of my old classmates at the country club. I quickly redid my eye makeup, then swiped on some light pink lip gloss. All I had to do now was get dressed. With a sigh, I gazed at the navy blue dress hanging on the shower door. I'd worn it for last year's dance, so I knew it fit me well. But still, it was a bummer having to re-wear it. An image of the dress I'd seen at the mall flashed through my mind. I hadn't even tried it on, but I knew it was the one for me. Sometimes you just had a good feeling about things. And sometimes you had a feeling that what you were about to do was the opposite of good. Like how I felt about going to the dance with my ex. A firm knock on the bathroom door woke me from my thoughts. A low voice called out, "How's it going, Han? You ready?" I opened the door to find my brother munching on an apple. I would have liked to see anyone else on the other side, but both Mom and Grammy were busy today taking Grandpa to the doctor's for a checkup. I was stuck with Liam driving me to the dance. "Almost. I just need to change." Liam nodded, then held up his hand. "About that. Hold on a sec." He walked out to the living room and returned with a black garment bag on a hanger. "This is for you." I eyed him suspiciously. "What is it?" "Just open it." I unzipped the bag halfway, and my mouth fell open. Inside was a dark green dress with a sweetheart neckline, intricate beading, and a puffy skirt made of tulle. It was the dress, the one I loved but couldn't afford. Where did you get this? At the mall, where else? It's the one you wanted, right? Yes, but how did you know? And why would you buy it for me? I couldn't believe Liam would do something this nice for me. Seth told me about it. Liam shrugged and took another bite of his apple. I thought you should look nice when you tell Bradley off tonight. That is what you're planning to do. Yes. My voice wavered even though Ava had walked me through exactly what to say tonight. I just needed the confidence to go through with it. Hopefully my guts would untangle themselves in time. I'm going to officially end things with him. Well, it's about time. I don't like saying I told you so, but Liam gave me a playful smirk. You deserve the best, Hannah. Don't let any guy, especially Bradley, make you think otherwise. Anyway, I'll let you get changed. I blinked quickly. This all still didn't make sense. I had so many questions like, when had Seth talked to my brother? But Liam was already walking back to the kitchen. I called out, "Thanks, Liam!" then began doing a celebratory dance. My shrieks of delight bounced off the bathroom walls as I took the dress out and put it on. Looking at my reflection in the mirror made me tear up. The emerald color complemented my hair and complexion well, and the bodice hugged my curves in all the right places. I looked more confident and put together than I felt, but I knew I'd be okay. I had the support of my family and friends, maybe even Seth. It was that support that kept me firm on my feet when I met Bradley outside the country club that evening. I had to admit, he looked good. He was as handsome as ever, with his wavy brown hair swept to the side. His broad shoulders filled out his tuxedo jacket, and he had grown another 2 inches since I last saw him over the summer. He beamed at me, his white teeth shining in the near darkness. I held my head up high and smiled back. "Bradley, you look nice." "Thanks. This is the same look I had when I got my headshots done last week." "Headshots? I didn't know you wanted to go into acting." "It's a new pursuit of mine." "Well, you always did like being in front of the camera." Speaking of, he took me by surprise and brought out his phone to take a selfie. "Let me post this real quick. I wouldn't want to waste a good hair day." "Of course not." I had to roll my eyes. How had I not noticed before how self-absorbed Bradley was? Seeing him like this only served to remind me of how amazing Seth was, and how much I missed him. I wondered what he was doing right now, since he no longer had to be my fake date tonight. The thought made me sad, but I vowed to stay strong. I had a mission to complete, and I wasn't going to leave until it was finished. After Bradley put his phone away, I followed him inside the club, past a sitting area and through a rounded archway. Memories came flooding back as I took in the cherry wood floors, the high ceiling and the large windows with a view of a lush green golf course and the Palo Alto hills. Only a year ago, my family and I had called this place our second home. I couldn't help but feel like an imposter. My gut twisted into a dozen knots. With quick steps, I stayed by Bradley's side as we entered the ballroom. Half of the place was packed with people dancing to YMCA, blaring from the speakers set up around a DJ booth. Others stood around with drinks in hand and chatted in groups. Someone must have spotted us because soon everyone I'd gone to school with last year surrounded us. Guys who gave high fives to Bradley and joked around with him, and girls I'd known for half my life who had stopped talking to me after my dad's scandal broke the news. They kept a few feet between us until one leggy, perfectly made-up girl broke through the crowd. It was Brooklyn, looking poised and in control in a tight red dress. I barely had a chance to blink before she stormed straight toward me, her cheeks flushed. "What do you think you're doing here?" A head taller than me in her stilettos, she stared down at me with disdain. "This club is for members only, not former members, and especially not boyfriend stealers." I balked. Who did Brooklyn think she was? "I'm here with Bradley, and despite what you may think, I didn't steal him from you. We were together for a long time before you came into the picture." Brooklyn bristled, her haughty eyes giving me a thorough once-over. She tossed her hair over her shoulders, then shook her head. Whatever, you're not even worth competing with. Have a nice time tonight, Cinderella. Pretty soon you'll have to go back to your sad little existence on the poor side of town. The girl standing behind Brooklyn cackled along with her before they all took off. My whole body froze, including my tongue. I hated letting her walk away without getting a word in, but I had nothing to say. I felt tired, defeated. This was the toxic stuff I dreaded facing tonight. Where was Bradley when I needed him? I see you talked to Brooklyn. Bradley suddenly appeared at my side. A line formed between his brows, marring his handsome face. You'll have to excuse her. She's not really sold on my plan. Your plan? The sheepish smile on his face was starting to make me worry. What are you talking about? My plan to break into Hollywood. He threw his shoulders back and puffed out his chest. As soon as I heard about your connection to Evan and Emma Sparks' nephew, I thought to myself, this is perfect. I do a favor for you, and you do a favor for me. I call that a win-win. The pieces to this very strange puzzle were starting to fall into place, and the picture it painted made me scoff loudly. You asked me to be your date tonight because you want me to help you meet the Sparks? He flashed a toothy grin my way. You catch on quick. I shook my head in disbelief. If he was looking for Sparks, he was going to get them tonight. I'd had enough. I wasn't even going to waste my breath on the whole speech I'd prepared because there was only one thing I wanted to get across to Bradley. I wish I'd caught on last year before we started dating, but better late than never. I know now that I can't give you what you want, and you definitely can't give me what I want. Maybe you'll catch your break someday, but you're going to have to do it without me. Bradley's face reddened as my words sank in. He wasn't used to not getting his way. Come on, Hannah, you don't mean that. No, Bradley, I do mean it. I'm done. We're done. I spun around, leaving Bradley with his mouth hanging open. A part of me was proud of myself for walking away, but the other part wanted to cry. If I had someone waiting for me, it'd be a different story. But I had no idea how the only boy I cared for felt about me anymore. Chapter 27. Seth. I smoothed the lapels of my black tuxedo as I walked through the foyer of the country club. The shiny leather dress shoes I wore tapped on the floor, marking my entrance as if I were someone more important than I felt. I'd never dressed up like this before, not even to any of my uncle's weddings, but tonight seemed as important of an occasion as any. Thank goodness Uncle Evan and I were the same size, and he didn't mind me borrowing his entire outfit. There were definitely perks to being related to Hollywood royalty. If only I had my uncle's charm. I approached the entryway to the ballroom, hesitating with my hand on the gold handle. It was one thing to attend a fancy dance, but another thing to do it uninvited. Not that I'd had any trouble getting into the club. Uncle Evan had made that possible, but I was now setting foot into a place where I didn't know anyone. Anyone besides Hannah. That thought settled my nerves a little. I really hoped she'd be happy to see me, especially since Liam had given me the job of taking her home in the limo Uncle Evan had rented for us. I pulled the door open, my eyes adjusting to the dim lighting. Music filled the air and the pounding bass line made me smile. My feet already felt lighter. Seeing people dancing made me want to dance too, and when I danced, everything was right in the world. My eyes scanned the room, looking for a flash of Hannah's red hair or her emerald green dress. I couldn't wait to see how beautiful she looked in it. When Liam and I had talked about me showing up to surprise Hannah tonight, I pictured her wearing the new dress. That's when I knew I had to get it for her. I'd bought it with my birthday money and delivered it to Liam earlier today, but Liam had offered to pay me back. As intimidating as he seemed on the outside, I was getting the idea that he was actually a softie on the inside. He really cared about his family, especially his sister. Knowing that he had entrusted me with the job of rescuing Hannah gave me the confidence I needed to come here tonight. And boy, was I glad I came. The moment I spotted Hannah, my stomach dropped. She was breathtakingly gorgeous. Not in a fake, made-up way, but in a genuine, almost vulnerable way. With her arms wrapped around herself and her chin down, she strode toward the entrance where I stood. It wasn't until she was 5 feet away from me that she realized who I was. Seth? She gazed up at me, surprise brightening her eyes. There was also one more emotion that took me a second to register. Relief. Her pink lips parted as if she were releasing a sigh. What are you doing here? I bridged the distance between us until we were face to face. Hannah, you look amazing. Thanks. You do too. She chewed her bottom lip, her brows furrowed. I don't understand. Why are you here? We ended our how to fool a guy in 10 days plan. I know, I didn't come for that. I came for you. Me? Yes, you. I heard you were going to end things with Bradley, so I was hoping I could be your date for the dance. Your real date. Would that be okay with you? She sniffled and blinked back tears. Yes, definitely. She paused. Does this mean you forgive me for leaking your secret? It wasn't your fault. I should actually be thanking you. It's a lot easier now not having to lie about who I am. No one seems to mind that I'm a spark. Hannah dropped her gaze, especially not the girls. Hey! I reached over and brushed a lock of hair from her cheek. The simple touch sparked electricity in my fingers, warming my skin and sending tingles up my arm. I don't care about any of them. I only care about you, Hannah. You were my friend before you knew who I was. You hung out with me before any of them even knew I was alive. With you, it's easy. We get each other, and I don't have to worry about being someone I'm not. I swallowed hard, ready to bare my heart. I really like you, Hannah Mitchell. She glanced up, a sweet smile curving her pretty pink lips. Yeah? I nodded. Yeah, you're the real deal. You're so beautiful inside and out. You make my heart feel like it's flying and my feet want to dance and never stop. It's like one long sugar rush with you, which makes sense because you're really sweet. She laughed, the sound filling my ears like music. You're the sweet one. I really, really like you too. I get 2 reallys? That's a record for me. You can get a zillion if you like. Hannah threw her arms around me and leaned her cheek on my chest. I'm so happy you came, Seth. I held her tight, savoring the warmth of her body and her familiar scent. Me too. My night is so much better now that you're here. I was actually on my way to call Liam to pick me up. But since you're here, she pulled back a little and looked up into my eyes. Want to dance? She didn't have to ask twice. For sure. The next song coming through the speakers happened to be a ballad. The bass line quieted down and the rhythm slowed. I took Hannah by the hand and led her to the dance floor. We got into position for the waltz, our posture straight, and began moving to the beat. Other couples our age and older filled up the floor as well. Hannah beamed at me, her eyes never leaving mine. This is better than anything I could have imagined. You and me here together. And this dress! Did you tell Liam about it? I knew it would look perfect on you. I actually bought it for you, but your brother insisted on paying for it. He also asked me to come tonight. He was worried about you. Her smile faltered. Did you only come because Liam told you to? No way. I really, really wanted to come. Having Liam's permission just made things easier. 2 reallys, huh? And a zillion more just for you. Thank you, Seth. There's no one else I'd rather be here with than you. As the music transitioned from the verse to the chorus, I spun Hannah around, then held her in my arms again. We moved gracefully as if we'd been dancing together for years, not days. It was funny how time seemed to speed up, yet also slow down in her presence, like it was doing now. My heart raced and all I could see was Hannah. Everything in my peripheral vision faded as I zeroed in on her mouth. I dropped my right hand to her waist and brought my left one up, still holding hers to my chest. Our steps slowed as I pulled her close to me, close enough to see her pupils dilate. We stopped dancing, but my heart continued to tap out a rapid beat. This was it. If there was a perfect opportunity to kiss her, it was now. I lowered my head and brushed my lips across hers. The touch was as soft as a feather, but as powerful as a storm. Flashes like lightning filled my vision. An electric charge flowed through my body, waking my senses. Every touch, every smell, every taste was intensified. When Hannah kissed me back, gently and sweetly, my brain turned to mush. I hardly remembered where we were or even my own name. I only knew I wanted to stay in this moment as long as possible because it was the best feeling ever. I finally discovered something I liked as much as dancing, if not more: kissing Hannah. Epilogue, Hannah. Ever have one of those moments when you can't believe how well things turned out, despite everything you could have done to mess it up? That's how it was for Seth and me. What had started out as a plan to fool a guy in 10 days turned into a surprisingly better one, an infinitely sweeter one. Yep, I got the guy and the best kiss of my life that night at the dance. Well, one of the best, because Seth and I had kissed plenty of times in the month since. Quick happy ones whenever we saw each other in the morning at school, and longer, slightly sad ones whenever we parted at the end of the day. But there was always the phone for weeknights and group dates on the weekends. Both Seth's parents and mine preferred us to hang out with other people around, which I didn't mind. It didn't matter what we did. Seth and I always had fun together. Like this evening, we were at my place for another Star Wars marathon. Ava was our usual official/unofficial chaperone, but tonight, Liam had joined us as well. I had to give Seth credit. Somehow, he'd gotten my brother and his overprotective eyes to back off a little. Maybe Liam trusted Seth enough not to hover around us, or maybe he was too busy thinking about saving up money for college next year. Whatever the case, he was currently more interested in messing with Ava's hair. My poor bestie was on the verge of falling asleep on the sofa, likely from boredom, and Liam was doing everything in his power to keep her awake. I vowed to pick a rom-com to watch next time just for her. Seth and I sat on the love seat on the other side of the living room, our fingers intertwined. He was so focused on the movie, his blue eyes unblinking as an intergalactic spaceship chase unfolded on the screen. I was enjoying the scene too, not the one on TV, but the one of my boyfriend. Did I mention how much I loved calling Seth that? It was hard to believe we'd only been in each other's lives for a short while because I felt so comfortable with him. He suddenly turned to me and smiled curiously. "You've been looking at me more than the TV. Is there something on my face?" "Just my lips." I leaned over and planted a quick peck on his warm cheek. His complexion reddened like it always did when I kissed him, making him even more adorable, if that were possible. "Are you sure Liam doesn't mind us kissing?" I smirked. He's too busy tormenting Ava to notice. Seth snuck a look at the other couch. I wonder if there's something going on with the two of them. "Ew!" I clamped a hand over my mouth. That came out louder than I intended, but in my defense, what Seth suggested was enough to make anyone scream. My brother and my best friend? No way. That would be so weird. You never know. Look what happened to us. We didn't plan on liking each other, but we did. I was only supposed to be your fake boyfriend, remember? Our plan worked better than we expected because we work better together than we expected. Seth chuckled. I can't argue with that. You're like the rhythm to my footwork, the ginger to my Fred, He paused, a line forming between his brows. The melody to your harmony? Nice. Oh, I have another one. The Princess Leia to my Han Solo. He looked so proud of his answer, I had to laugh. You are too cute. You're cuter. He kissed my cheek, then exclaimed, "Oh, hey, this is a good part." A lightsaber battle on the screen caught his attention again. He wrapped his arm around my shoulders and pulled me close. I snuggled into his side and sighed contentedly. I didn't know what the rest of the year, or high school for that matter, held, but I knew Seth would be there for every part of it. He wasn't just any guy I'd fallen for. He was the guy, the it guy for me. Not because he was a spark, but because he was Seth. Sweet, kind, and loving Seth, who liked me for me, and who I liked for exactly who he was. The guy I was lucky enough to kiss in 10 days. The end. How to Kiss a Guy in 10 Days. Edenvale Arts Academy Series, Book 1. Written by Liwen. Narrated by Alyssa Gray. Thank you. Thank you for listening to How to Kiss a Guy in 10 Days. To find out more about Liwen other books, please visit her website at liwenho.com. And be sure to subscribe to this channel so you'll be notified when a new audiobook is available.